By the Vice Chair of the Statewide Commission on Recycling, Markets, and Curbside Recycling. Welcome to our meeting for October 6, 2021. Our staff today, Jessica, who else is with you?
My supervisor, Laura Moreno, is here as well.
Great. All right, so let's go ahead and start the meeting. Chair Heidi Sanborn will be joining us a little bit after 10 a.m. this morning. And so I will chair the meeting from this point forward, and we'll see how she's feeling when she returns from her, I think she's got a press conference. So I'm going to go ahead and start with a roll call, please. And just raise your hand. Jessica, help me keep tally because I can't see everyone that's on the screen. Or if you could just acknowledge present or here, that would be even better. So let's start with Commissioner John Burchard. Commissioner Burchard, are you present? I saw a raised hand. There you go. Commissioner Cadena?
I'm here.
Commissioner Davis?
Yes, I'm here.
Commissioner Dell?
Present.
Commissioner Don Levy? Commissioner Don Levy? Okay. Commissioner Ferrante?
Here.
Commissioner Kapikoff?
Here.
Commissioner Lapis?
Good morning.
Morning. Commissioner Medrano is excused for today. Commissioner Oseguera?
Good morning.
Morning. Commissioner Schneider?
Good morning.
Morning. Commissioner Sky?
Good morning, I'm here.
Good morning. Commissioner Toyota? Commissioner Toyota? All right. Maybe she'll come in later. And Commissioner Ward?
Present here. Good morning.
Morning, Ted. Jessica, are there any minutes for the previous meeting that we have to approve?
Yes, the September 1st commission meeting minutes are needing to be approved.
Are there any questions before we ask for a motion on the minutes? If not, well, I need a motion, please.
I believe that was the meeting in which we discussed the additional two-person committees, and I didn't see the minutes specifically specify those. I can detail those additional, but they were discussed, and oh, this is the 1st September. That happened on the 15th.
Okay, yeah, this is September 1st.
All right, that move to approve.
Want to make a motion, Ted?
I did move to approve.
I'll
Okay.
second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Ward, seconded by Commissioner Sky to approve the minutes. Any opposition? Seeing none, the minutes are approved. Okay. Jessica, we're going to now go to item 3, public comments. These are items that the public can speak on that are not listed on today's agenda. We have 1 minute or 150 words from the public. Jessica, are there any public comments?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Valle. There are 3 public comments. I'll read the first one from Michael Gross from Zanker Recycling. It reads, Zanker Recycling and the Construction and Demolition Recycling Association, CDRA, have been working with the Gypsum Association, GA, to develop a gypsum board landfill diversion policy for California. The GA has provided information that recyclers in California will be able to use to inform the development of operations to meet the gypsum industry's high product manufacturing standards. GA has shown an extraordinary level of cooperation to further the requests from the California Recycling Commission. The CDRA looks forward to the continued collaboration in developing opportunities for a gypsum board landfill and recycling in California. The next comment is from Sean Levi at Planet Green. It reads, "We are an inkjet cartridge remanufacturer playing a big part in the circular economy by recycling OEM printer cartridges for reuse. We need Recycling Commission's support and help as our industry is being destroyed by the importation of cheap single-use plastic printer cartridges. These cartridges are not recyclable and have devalued OEM cartridges to the point it is becoming cost prohibitive to remanufacture certain cartridges and generating unnecessary waste in both the recycling and waste streams." The third comment is from Paula Borges at the City of Palo Alto. It reads, "Dear State Commission on Recycling Markets and Curbside Recycling, the City of Palo Alto is interested in the creation of an enhanced database and a new recyclables tracking system within the next 1 to 2 years that requires businesses handling recyclables to begin entering data shortly afterwards. Additionally, we are exploring a third-party certification process for recyclables." To this effect, the City of Palo Alto Environmental Services Division would like CalRecycle to know that we support the Recycling Commission's Policy 20-10, Controls on Plastic Waste Exports. Recommendation number 1, full transparency on plastic waste destinations. This is an important first step to prevent recyclable materials from being disposed in other countries and from further contributing to greenhouse gas emissions. Further, we would like CalRecycle to increase the information reported pursuant to the Recycling and Disposal Facility Reporting System to ensure access to clear information on where recyclable materials are sent, including that, and that is 150 words, so you can see the rest of that comment through the public comment portal. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. I appreciate Mr. Gross's comments. Mr. Levy, critical issue, cartridges. That is a huge issue. And I think the idea from Palo Alto has merit. But we'll discuss those if the commissioners want to go into depth at another agenda item. All right, moving on to agenda item number 4. Chair Sanborn and I have continued this item to October 20th. Are there any comments from commissioners on item 4? And that's amendments to the charter. Seeing none, we'll move on to item 5, the status of related legislation and budget proposals. Several of you, I'm sure, have followed the new bills that have been passed and signed by the governor and the legislature. Is there anyone that would like to speak about those that were signed into law? And I'm looking to see if Commissioner Lapis would like to start the discussion.
Sure. I can't say I prepared anything, but I did want to just say that, like, it's pretty awesome. I don't know if folks saw all the bills that were signed yesterday, but the vast majority of what the legislature did came out of this commission. And so to the extent that anybody feels like, you know, why are we spending so much time on these meetings? And, you know, it's been a long, however long it's been. So it is nice to see that so many of our recommendations did get signed into law yesterday. So the diversion credit for exporting mixed plastics, the prohibition on the use of the chasing arrows on products that don't have recycling markets, the basically whole suite of recommendations for compostable plastics and compostable products, a ban on PFAS, refillable bottles under the bottle bill. And then the one that wasn't really one of our recommendations, but was also part of that package, was to-go utensils and making those only available to folks who want them. But I mean, it's pretty obvious. I think we set the agenda for the legislature. And obviously a lot of stuff we care about didn't get done. But I don't know, I feel like it's a good reminder that we're not wasting our time here.
Totally agree. Commissioner Dell, were you pleased with SB 343 by Senator Ben Allen?
Yes, to say the least. So I just like to thank everybody on the commission. I think what we accomplished was tremendous. I've been fighting the deceptive label laws for a long time, and I think this is going to be a great reset. And now, of course, my next concern is enforcement. And we can bring that up along the way, perhaps when the Cal Recycle director talks today, because we have a looming issue around enforcement of recycled content laws, which are in place. So it's great that we have laws. Now we need enforcement of the laws, and existing ones aren't being enforced. But I think everybody, I think this is just tremendous what we've accomplished. If all the existing laws and these new suite of laws get enacted and enforced, I believe it will make a step change. And I just took a walk around my neighborhood this morning before with my doggies before the call. And yeah, you know, my neighbors' curbside bins are still filled with all kinds of contamination. And this is a cost, this is a hazard, this needs to end. But thank you, Commissioner Lapis. Yes, we are not wasting our time here. I think this is really great progress that we've made, and now we should really make sure it's all enforced. Thank you.
Commissioner Donlevy, I see that you've joined us. I don't see any significant movement on the bottle bill. Any comments about your impressions of what was signed or not signed?
Sure. I'm excited about Assembly Bill 8081, and I hope this will kind of send a signal for the cities and all the service providers to look at the material that they're collecting in their curbside and commercial programs to make sure that the material is getting sorted and has a good destination, and that mixed plastic is not something that we should be exporting, doesn't count as diversion. Our recycling collection programs should be looked at as recycling programs and not as diversion programs. So hopefully with SB 343 and AB 881, all the cities and service providers will look at their programs and maybe take this as an opportunity to reset what is actually collected that will help the contamination in other materials, whether it's the fiber material or the PET or HDPE, and really take 2022 as a new year to clean up our recycling collection programs, to take the burden off of the processors that have to deal with a high amount of contamination from material that just wasn't being recycled. So I think 2022 will be a good year, and I applaud the efforts of Senator Ben Allen and the sponsors of AB 8081. So thank you.
Yeah, just to chime in on that issue, you know, our Alameda County Solid Waste Management Authority has a recycling board. And then, of course, we have an agency called Stop Waste here in Alameda County. And our meetings now are quarterly on these very same issues that the commission has been discussing. But through our county waste authorities, we found that, you know, collectively, that's where all the cities come together as one on these issues that we're talking about. And that's really the genesis of where the conversation can begin on reformation of the waste stream and community education. As Commissioner Snyder said, it doesn't matter what part of California you live in, the same old stuff is going into all these containers, basically everything we don't want. That constitutes about 40% by my tally in my area of material that is just contamination. So we're trying to educate folks. I took something out of a local newspaper, the actual size of a newspaper, 1, 2, 3, 4 panels. If you open it up, we're going to put together something that size with color, pictures, descriptions of what's coming into our facility, so that it can be folded, multi-folded, and then when you open it up, it's kind of a grand view of what's happening in our community and what people need to stop doing. Along with that, we're highlighting the people who work in our facility and say, these are the people who live and work right here in town that have to pick through your stuff. And oh, by the way, they're going to be holding up in their hands adult diapers, toys, plastic bags, tools, and lots of other things that we don't want in our recycling stream. We're going to try to do a real hard punch at folks in very large photographs and multi-languages so that people can visibly see the impact of what they're putting into their containers. We're going to give that a shot within the next quarter to see what impact it has. We're going to target certain neighborhoods first and see if we can get any headway. We're also going to be present at an upcoming Halloween event where we're taking out our truck and talking to folks out in the open about contamination in our waste stream. So any ideas that commissioners have on that end, I think it's important that we share that statewide. But again, I found that the county waste authorities are a good mechanism and a good vehicle for starting the conversation so that there's uniformity within the cities, within the county. Anybody want to chime in?
Richard, I think you make an excellent point, Richard, that there has to be a message throughout the state that does provide clarity to constituents, right? I mean, there is, I think, still significant confusion by residents in California and businesses, quite frankly, to understand what is recyclable and what is compostable. And I think outreach programs throughout the state in cities and counties and in different forms that share a common message is important to ensure that as we move forward, materials are placed correctly into the streams so that they obviously can be then, processed and recycled into new products. So I think that's extremely important, Richard.
Richard, we're doing a couple of projects. We're using a protocol on looking at contamination in curbside containers and then having feedback, actually having face-to-face discussions, including discussions with people who we've identified as contributing to that contamination. So I think one of the messaging that seems to work best are images. We can tell people to put plastics number 1 and 2 or 5 or whatever, but that doesn't really mean anything. If you show a picture of a plastic bottle or a plastic milk jug, that resonates with people. And then the other thing that I would say that seems to be fairly effective is using targeted social media ads. You can, for a really nominal amount, you can reach thousands of people on social media, and using that graphic content, this is recyclable. It really works. And then the third aspect of that is community-based social marketing approach, where emphasize the positive. If you say don't recycle this, that's the wrong message. Put this in the trash is a positive message, or recycle this as a positive message. So there's a lot that I think we're learning and others can share, and I know someday we'll hear what CalRecycle is going to be doing on that statewide outreach. But you asked for for some examples that seems to be working for us. Those three approaches.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Anybody else? Go ahead, Commissioner Schneider.
Thank you. I'm actually on a different topic. Commissioner Lapis talked about the tiny bill that says that you have to order for takeout, you have to order what we're calling accessories in this county. If there are recycling coordinators watching this, San Mateo County created a model ordinance that I believe all the cities have signed on. Half Moon Bay went into implementation on July 1st, and most of us are going in with the county on March 25th of next year. But we're also working on our activation ordinances for for the composting ordinance. Do you see that the two might be tied together? And I would say if you want to see one restaurant that has already done it, if you order takeout from Chipotle, you actually have to ask for packets of sauce or silverware or plasticware or whatever. on that. So I'm excited that it may have been a smaller bill, but it's all ending up in the compost anyway. Because that's residents think it comes with food, so there it goes.
Yeah, it appears that restaurants and large corporations are paying attention to, for example, straws. Starbucks is always asking you, do you want a straw or not? I was in a restaurant recently and they said, do you want a paper straw or not? And so I'm not sure about smaller businesses, but it seems that, the local restaurants that are around me, there's about 4 Mexican restaurants and they're small and they seem to be also asking you or not presenting with a straw, for example, unless you want one. You have to request it. In fact,
Right.
they're not even giving you water
Right.
unless you ask for it.
Well, and we've just come through our community festival season, and even the small vendors that show up at events, they've gone to paper straws. So it was, and yet Pete's is still going through their plastic straws. We've had a plastic straw ban for a couple of years. It went into hiatus during COVID, but it's coming back now. So maybe that's more things that can go to Commissioner Dell. I'm not sure where we are now with the education and marketing group, but we still have that function in this committee. Or
Right.
commission.
So if I can just respond to that, there isn't a committee anymore. In the last meeting, and previous 2 meetings, I've definitely asked that we get Cal Recycle to the education group, which is called OPA, to come and give us an update on the $50 million of taxpayers' funds that are going into the educational program, which I know got slowed down with COVID. So I don't know if that fell through the cracks, but we definitely need to get them in and see what the progress has been made.
Thank you.
How about Southern California? We haven't heard too much from Southern California. Anybody down there seen any changes? LA County, San Bernardino? Commissioner Scott, you there?
Now be recorded.
Sorry, I'm having some technical issues.
We could hear you for a second there.
Yeah, he was getting feedback off the. Richard, on the budget, one note is changes to some of Cal Recycle's program, a new Office of Innovation and Market Development that I think, as Commissioner Lapis said, kind of paralleled the recommendation that came from the commission. And then there was a substantial amount of money. Nick, I'm not sure I can keep track of everything. There was money out of the greenhouse gas reduction funds for project-specific use. There's some, I think, some general fund money, and some of that goes to support innovation and over a 2-year period. So that we're going to see that ramp up. I think from the market development side, there was quite a bit of movement.
Commissioner Lapis? Thank you, John.
Yeah, I actually meant to mention that too, that, I forgot to mention we got $270 million in the budget, which is not nothing. And at least one of the main recommendations coming out of the organics work group or subcommittee, wherever we are, was funding for local government implementation of 1383, which is the biggest chunk of that money. So that's also very exciting to see.
Agreed. Commissioner Sky, any luck on your end?
So for some reason, my laptop is freezing, and so I'm connected on my phone. I'm going to restart my laptop, and hopefully it'll improve. I'm glad Commissioner Lapis talked about the budget, because that is a very big deal, certainly a big investment, much larger than we've seen in many years. So we're cautiously optimistic, of course.
Okay. Got it. Thank you. We'll look for you to come back on. Ted, up in the rural areas,
Yeah,
Comments, go ahead.
thanks for asking. And I'd just like to say that the utensils and the straw bans have not yet hit the rural areas in my experience. It's actually somewhat similar to the plastic bag bans, in that what we've seen here locally is less people bringing their own reusable bags and more people taking, instead of the thin plastic bags, thicker plastic bags. But we still see straws regularly handed out, utensils still regularly handed out. And so it becomes a challenge how to get our rural communities to follow along with these statewide laws.
I think it gets back to what Commissioner Dell has always raised. We pass legislation, but there's difficulty in doing enforcement. And I think that's really the key. If we don't have...
And I agree. I think that's really the ultimate thing that we're all trying to grapple with, which is there's definite, tangible benefits to claiming something as recyclable or compostable, especially in California. And yet the follow-through about the cost when those claims are false, or when that's a misrepresentation, or it's not borne out in reality, are close to zero. There's really almost no downside. And that's really something that needs to change.
Agreed. Commissioner Dell, I'm just curious, when you talked about enforcement, there's a possibility that, for example, with the bottle bill, CalRecycle is really good on enforcement, on recyclers and processors. That degree of oversight, specifically on the bottle bill, is clearly missing on other forms of legislation. So I'm going to guess that unless CalRecycle is given more resources, more staffing, their ability to enforce some of these changes, landmark decisions, is going to be very limited. I don't know what other department it would fall on.
Right. So labeling doesn't fall under their jurisdiction. It's under the Attorney General or district attorneys. I've actually recently spoken on a big group of national, state level Attorney General staff to encourage them to enforce laws in their states, including the FTC laws, because it's fallen to NGOs to file lawsuits, which have some success or not. And the corporations definitely lawyer up with all their billions of profits and fight those on technicalities. So this, I know it's not the same thing as speeding or healthcare fraud, but nevertheless, these are laws and they have to get enforced. And I actually think we can get them enforced through fines and penalties. And I have some prepared comments when the CalRecycle director comes on about the upcoming recycled content law. For example, Keurig made $6.5 billion in gross profit last year, used 19.3 million pounds of PET in California, and reported zero recycled content in the last report. Now, I want to make sure that they're going to be fined and not get a waiver, right? This should not come to taxpayers to fund PET recycling facilities for them. This is their responsibility. This is our form of EPR, and this one actually does fall on CalRecycle's plate, right? You can tell I'm amped up about this. There should be no waivers. There should be no, oh, COVID happened. No, they've been increasing production and making profit just fine. But unfortunately, on the label laws, those fortunately or unfortunately, I don't think everything should end up on CalRecycle's desk. The label laws have to go into the false advertising Attorney General, District Attorney pot, and we need to get their attention. Commissioner Lapis may have more to say on this. He's worked on this for a while.
Commissioner Snyder, you had your hand up?
Yeah, this isn't enforcement of labeling, but for example, my city did plastic bag bans about 8 years ago, and then polystyrene takeout food packaging at least 6 or 7 years ago. But when the county stepped in, and because the county solid waste side has a relationship with the health department, and they're also the LEA for landfills, The health department, when they do their routine inspections of restaurants, are the ones that check to see if there's plastic bags, what kind of takeout food packaging, the straws now, all of that, and the new reusable takeout packaging, the ordinances that are going into effect for San Mateo County next year, that will come through the health department. So I just assumed that that's how other counties ran it, because that's how our county has been doing it for quite some time. But that's one way to help do the enforcement more on a proactive side. They will go in, and and Ted, for your rural areas, because our coast side led this because their main industry is tourism and the ocean. So they wanted to get rid of plastics more so than those of us on the bay side. Enforcement will come friendly first, not seeing it in their storage in their restaurants, and then later on action once the grace period is over. So I think that there's front-end education and then enforcement at the back end, and then just having a good relationship with the county health department.
Forgive me, I saw another hand up, but I forgot. Was there somebody else that had a hand up? No? Okay. All right. The last thing I would say about the issue of enforcement, which is very important to me, having received several fines at our center here in Union City for minor stuff, but they get expensive. We've talked to our local district attorney about enforcement, and I think the issue when you involve a district attorney, it has to be, it's difficult for them when it's state legislation versus outright fraud, for example, or something that's based in the county. Whenever there's state legislation related to regulation and enforcement and prosecution, the local district attorney that I've spoken to, and she's a leader throughout the state, Nancy O'Malley, has said that when you have state legislation, regardless of what it is, it's very difficult for a district attorney at the local level to try to enforce something that's passed into law by the state. And it falls sort of outside of their wheelhouse. So again, it has to fall, I guess, maybe to the Attorney General's office, but I don't know if the Attorney General's office has staff that can focus on these types of issues. Does anybody know, an environmental department at the state AG?
Yeah. So coincidentally, we reached out to the state AG's office earlier this week to talk about this and basically raise the need with them. And they said they would check internally. They do have two separate divisions. They have a public resources division that does environmental issues, and then they have a consumer protection division that does false advertising, and it's kind of between the two. So we had a preliminary conversation with them and waiting to see what the response is.
Commissioner Scott, you with us again? It's the
I've
screen.
been here the whole time. I'm just listening.
I'm sorry, were you there? Go ahead. I'm not sure we can hear you. Okay. All right. We are being very efficient and running ahead of schedule. And I don't know how that impacts the presentation by Director Wagner. Jessica, do you have any idea? Is she going to be available at a certain time?
She's available at 10 a.m., I believe.
Yeah, good morning, Richard. This is Zoe, and she will just been pre-meeting right now, so she will be available to join us at 10.
Sorry, Jessica, that was, I couldn't decipher what you just said.
Hi all, this is Laura Moreno. That was Zoe Heller, and I think she's just having some technical difficulties, so she sounded garbled. She was just saying that Rachel is not available till 10 a.m.
Okay, all right. Well, We can continue this discussion or we can move to the next item, which is the status of related legislation. I'm sorry, data review and request from Cal Recycle that any commissioner would like to ask for. Are there any items that the commission would like to request from Cal Recycle?
Well,
Go ahead.
just on topic, what enforcement has been done on mislabeled products? On products that are improperly labeled as recyclable or compostable in California? Has there been any enforcement done? And if so, what's the nature of that enforcement?
Okay. We'll take that as an item, Jessica. Anyone else?
Yeah, I've got one, and it's related to something I'm going to ask to be on the agenda for the next session, and that is data around what is the source of the recycled content in our plastic shopping bags. We have a 40% recycled content, and while SB 343 was being debated, the plastics industry gave out, in my opinion, false information that it's actually plastic bags that are going back into plastic bags. And based on all the research that I've done, it's not true. It's actually pallet wrap from back of stores that that consumers never touch. It's still called post-consumer resin, but it's never touched. And so we really need to get this transparent, right? And so I'd like to put on the agenda for the next session a presentation about a policy recommendation on transparency. But my data request to Cal Recycle at this point is all data collected regarding the recycled content in plastic bags. How much? I believe there's no legal requirement to actually certify where it comes from. It could be coming from Indonesia. It may not even be our plastic waste that ends up in plastic films, except for there's a couple plastic film recyclers in California, but not many. So all existing data that Cal Recycle has about how much, where's it coming from, what type of recycled content in our plastic bags. Thank you.
Okay, got it. Anyone else? Feel free, we have a little time on our hands here. I just want to check, did Commissioner Toyota, are you here? Okay, all right. Well, we've got 20 minutes before the next agenda item.
I've got one more data request.
Go ahead, Ted.
And it's more a determination. But based on some of the communications that Chair Sanborn's received regarding advanced chemical recycling, and that we do have a two-person committee looking at those things, I just want to clarify that at present, I'm not aware of any so-called advanced chemical recycling that meets the three-part California test of what qualifies as recycling. And under that framework, to me, that's not something that this commission necessarily needs to or should focus on, as it would be a disposal mechanism. That's not our focus. So to me, unless there is some definitive word from Cal Recycle that advanced chemical recycling meets the three-part test of what is recyclable in California, that we don't need to really have further discussions about that. I understand there are industries that are interested in promoting it, but if it doesn't fit into our system, then we shouldn't feel uncomfortable saying that. So is that request clear? It's like, is there an advanced chemical recycling that meets the three-part? If there isn't, do we need to have that as part of our discussions?
Pretty clear to
And that
me.
would be, is there one in operation today? Not theoretically, but is there one in operation today?
Right, because the context of this is really, in all honesty, incineration has been repackaged in a variety of different ways over the years, and you know, it's called resource recovery, called this, called that, but essentially it's different flavors of incineration. And I don't think that we need to dive into the latest renaming of that technology.
It is something that we've covered a lot of time, a lot of ground with. I agree. So, yeah, we can take up the issues that we believe merit some of our time, but it's just redundant to continue to visit the issue once we've pretty well put it to bed, and there seems to be no significant movement by the industry to do something that is actual proof that's being recycled. Commissioner Snyder, I'm sorry, do you have your hand up?
I'm up.
Yes, kind of a follow-up to Ted, and it was a request that I sent to Chair Heidi, and I think she forwarded to Kobe, and I can see that Commissioner Sky is below me. I serve as a board member on Peninsula Clean Energy, which is a community choice aggregate electricity provider to most of the residents in the county. And part of our job on this board is to ensure that we have supply during the times when the sun is not shining and the wind is not blowing. Two of our more common sources of truly renewable energy. So my board is looking at biomass in various forms. And to me, there might be some that are acceptable and there might be some that are not acceptable. And I think it's Oceanside, forgive me if I've got the wrong city, that is actually taking their residential green and possibly food waste to an anaerobic digester and then feeding that biomethane to the electricity grid on that. Up here, because I've talked about it, our garbage hauler created anaerobic digestion for food and green waste, and that comes back as biomethane to run the fleet vehicles. And my request to the commission then was, we're one of many CCAs forming in California. All of us have the legal requirement to ensure electric supply to our customers. And if there isn't enough solar and wind yet, and all of these CCAs are coming online, what are the other sources of renewables? And biomass is being looked at. So my request was, does this commission want to look at acceptable sources of biomass to the electric grid, not necessarily to running fleet vehicles or not? Otherwise, I can do my best as one of 24 board members in my county to say we really have to make sure that the choice that the big multi-million-dollar contract that we are signing with energy providers is really a good form of renewable energy. For example, a few months ago, we signed a contract with a wind farm right in the heart of where they're releasing California condors. And the question was, and staff hadn't done the research, are they putting in a form of wind that will not kill raptors and condors? That's just one example that there can be, it can all sound good, but it may not be good. So that's why I threw that out there to complement Ted's comments. Thank you.
I happen to sit on the CCA for Alameda County as well, Commissioner Schneider. And wind and solar are big issues in our county. As you know, Alameda County has a lot of windmills up through the Altamont Pass. And there is also solar panels being placed up in the Altamont area and Livermore Valley. There is a lot of opposition from people simply because the amount of space that solar takes in the panels, etc. So we're seeing some resistance there, but to be honest with you, I don't think we've looked at biomass yet. And if we have, I'm not familiar with it. So that's an interesting topic. I wonder if Commissioner Oseguera You have any thoughts about biomass as an energy source beyond just trucks?
I know Commissioner Valle that Kobe wanted to make some comments. I don't know if we discussed some items the other day, and so I think he was prepared to make a couple of comments. Kobe, have you been able to connect?
Thank you. Yeah, so I am hoping that you can hear me. I don't know what's going on with my connection earlier. I was able to listen in, but apparently you weren't able to hear me when I tried to talk earlier. I didn't have too much to add to the previous discussion that wasn't already covered by other commissioners, but I did want to respond to Commissioner Ward's comments. First, I'd say I would support the request from CalRecycle to provide more information about the technologies that can meet the three-part test. Although I know that this was covered in previous presentations, that chemical recycling is not doesn't conflict with the three-part test. There's certainly a lot of different technologies that would fall under the umbrella of chemical recycling that are capable of meeting the three-part test. The biggest hurdle with the three-part test is really the pretresables, and typically if you're dealing with plastic materials, that's not an issue. So I don't know that that is necessarily a barrier. It's some of the other regulations, just to be honest, that are more of a barrier, and that's what Commissioner Oseguera and I have been trying to address. None of the presentations that we've received, and we've had a lot of companies that have either reached out directly to us or have been forwarded through the chair for us to meet with, have proposed incineration as a technology, so that's not at all what we're looking at. Few of them are even looking at fuel production, and I know that there's mixed feelings about whether fuel production is or is not considered recycling. In terms of biomass conversion, fuel production from biomass materials is considered recycling under current statutes, definitely falls within the work of this commission, very relevant to our compliance with SB 1383, which I see as one of the big issues this commission needs to address in the coming year. So that's something that Commissioner Oseguera and I are working on. We're addressing what recommendations make sense for us to tackle, particularly regulations that are either obsolete or counterproductive, and particularly the areas where recommendations can help to increase development of marketable products in particular for materials that otherwise through our current technologies that are more readily permittable or already in operation would otherwise not be able to divert from landfill disposal. So there's an intersection with 1383, there's an intersection with recycling market development, and that's where we're focusing. Hope that helps.
I came in loud and clear, Commissioner Scott, you're back on. Good to hear you. Commissioner Ward?
I think Commissioner Davis had his hand up before me.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, actually Kobe's comments reminded me of a project that we're seeing in San Bernardino County with a cement kiln wanting to use engineered fuel. And I think as a data request, it would be very helpful to understand the engineered fuel threshold. There was a bill a few years ago, but I'm not sure how extensively it's been implemented. But I know at least in our area there's interest in cement kilns and using it, and it's basically material that's gone through a MRF, the recovery's taken place, and it's the residue from that material that then is used as a substitute for coal, and so has a beneficial effect. It's still combusting material, but the material's already come out of a MRF and not been recovered at the MRF. I'd be very interested in learning more about that, and particularly if it's being applied somewhere. So I would ask if we could get some information from CalRecycle about that engineered fuel process.
Commissioner Sky and then Commissioner Dell.
I got skipped. Could I take my place back?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Sure. So,
So just a quick comment, and this is just my own personal opinion, but as long as we're taking a deeper dive into incinerative technologies and chemical recycling. I just thought I'd say that from a rural perspective, sometimes there are either environmental or cost or operational benefits to considering some incineration in some cases. What I'm thinking of is expired fireworks is handled by fire departments, outdated munitions, and projectile marine flare. If there was a mechanism by which those could have an engineered system for on-site incineration or neutralization, those would be, I think, more cost-effective ways to deal with those things that are already in our stream, and in ways without compromising California's environmental goals, rather than spending, you know, $18,000 to collect 2 flares and ship them across several states. It might make more sense to have other approaches. We might consider that as sort of the broader theme of when is some kind of incineration even potentially.
Commissioner Dell?
Did Commissioner Cadena come before me?
I don't know. I'm sorry. Commissioner Cadena, please.
Just to touch on what John was talking about earlier, Kern County, we're already going to build, it's a facility. It's going to cost us about $35 million to do it. We're almost through the permitting processes and we've had no glitches so far. The facility is going to process 140,000 tons of municipal waste per year, and it's going to cost about $80 a ton to process it. So it's a conversion technology, but it's not an RDF. So it's going to be using transformation technology versus just incineration. And it can be made into anything, but what makes it usable for us is that we want it to be an engineered fuel, because we have contracts that will buy the product at $35 a ton to offset the $80 a ton it costs us to make it. But I guess the 1% that is part of the regulations from CalRecycle of contamination, the only thing that holds us back is that we need it to be up to 10 instead of the 1. The 1% is the issue. So if we could get CalRecycle to take a look at that 1% and bump it up to 10, then we could make it into anything. But at $80 a ton, you're getting a product to be made into something else, which is going to cost additional money to make it into something else, like building materials or whatever you want to make out of it. But to make it worthwhile and a commodity, the best use would be engineered fuel for us. But like I said, our contract's in place. We're actually going to build it. It'll be the first of its kind in California. So hopefully, if it works like it's supposed to, and I've done a lot of research to see what goes into it, the technology is called hydrolyze versus incineration. So I have some information on it. And I was going to present it as an emissions reduction, but really after talking to Commissioner Davis, I'm thinking we should hit it from the 1383 perspective instead. So if CalRecycle could provide, or at least a pathway to where we can have that up to that much contamination, we can take it straight from the trucks that are coming in and pull out the glass and the metal and that sort of stuff, and then the rest gets processed. But Kern County produces 1 million tons a year, so it's only 140,000. But if it works out, it could be the answer to a whole lot of problems. So that's the request, though. CalRecycle could take a look at that 1% rule in the contamination allowances. We're good to go after that. That's the only thing holding us back.
So a little bit out of my wheelhouse with regard to transformation technology, Commissioner Ward and Davis, with regard to what Commissioner Cadena has said, you want to shed a little bit more light? It was a little bit difficult to hear. Commissioner Cadena.
As she was speaking, I managed to dig out the bill, and it was AB 1126 from 2013. So I guess my request to get more information around that. And specifically the implementation. I'm not familiar with this 1% limit that Commissioner Cadena was mentioning, but if there is a limit, I know there's a limit on compost production, but if there are specific standards that Cal Recycle has set for implementation of 1126, AB 1126, that would be my request, that we learn what those are.
Ted, you got anything on this issue?
I'd like to know if that facility has actually been permitted. Has it passed all the air quality issues that I would think would be really important in Kern County?
So far, we've had absolutely no permitting issues. We're scheduled to break ground at our facility in Bakersfield. It's Sabina landfill, and they're going to be using our the methane that the landfill produces to help power the facility, and the water sources are coming from we have a mined dugout area that they're going to be able to have the water that the facility is going to need to run. So actually, I'm surprised. I expected to have more issues with permitting, but so far, no issues with permitting.
Okay, I think I'm next to go. I just wanted to comment on cement kilns, which Gaia has studied in detail, and I could ask them to give a presentation. It's a horribly dirty process. Resource derived fuel is not a solution. It's carbon spewing. It's just burning plastic waste and spewing more carbon. I mean, for all the effort we're talking about of going to solar and wind, to put plastic waste in cement kilns does nothing. It just spews carbon. And even worse, the cement kilns don't have air control monitors for things like dioxin. PVC is going to end up in that resource-derived fuel, which is just a fancy name for plastic waste pellets that are not recyclable, and get burned. And then we have bigger air emission problems. So if we're going to have a session on burning plastic waste in cement kilns, which I'm very happy has not happened in California, I definitely have some serious research and experts to bring in to show all the serious negative effects of doing it.
Ted, from a rural area, any opinion here?
I don't have anything to add. I think these are important issues to address, and yet because incineration has a long history and many interested players, I think there's a risk of getting bogged down in studying different aspects of what are ultimately largely disposal technologies. So I acknowledge that there may be some recycling and chemical recovery.
Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one point I wanted to make is that I'm sure John already knows this, but the legislation he referenced specifically carved out engineered municipal solid waste fuel facilities as a different form of disposal technology. And that was part of the compromise and why we didn't oppose the bill, that it's a non-transformation but still disposal facility. And that's outside the scope of what we're promoting here.
I know
Commissioner, can
transformation years ago. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to add, and I'm glad Commissioner Lapis brought this up, the bill that's been referenced, AB 1126, it did create that, carve out for engineered municipal solid waste conversion. It's essentially, the intent was to facilitate rough-derived fuel being added to cement kilns to reduce their carbon emissions so that they wouldn't be driven out of the state, just to be blunt about it, because I feel like our commission does better when we're plain-spoken and we focus on the bigger issues. The two-person commission that Commissioner Osigura and I are part of has not been looking at incineration or EMSW or RDF or any of these other disposal technologies. And we do see that there's no appetite on this commission to review those technologies. We do think that some of the wording for transformation and EMSW conversion does create a lot of confusion and does in some cases hold back technologies that we think are recycling because it's not clear. The terminology in the statute is not very well structured or very clear, and in some cases conflicting with other parts of statute and other regulations that CalRecycle has been moving forward. So that's been our focus. And we certainly have a lot of work to do in that area. But I wanted to go back to an issue Commissioner Schneider mentioned, which is I think there's also an important role for our commission to evaluate essentially best practices for facilities that would be permitted as recycling facilities, to make sure that, just as the case with traditional recycling facilities and composting facilities, some are managed well and are good actors, and some are not well managed, were not well permitted, and create environmental burdens and burdens to the communities that they're sited in. And to the extent that there are not a lot of these facilities operating in the state right now, we want to make sure that we encourage good regulations. LA County actually has a really good model for this. We have what's called our Green Zone program, where we facilitate permitting, but the minimum requirements for recycling and other sustainability related infrastructure has a very high bar in terms of where they can be sited, what minimum standards they have to follow, and I think that could be a good model for the state. So we're going to incorporate some of that, and I hopefully it's helpful to you, Commissioner Schneider, and to others in terms of how to evaluate facilities that are being proposed in local jurisdictions.
Well, we're nearing the end of our discussion. Jessica, has Director Wagner arrived?
I do not believe she has arrived yet.
Okay. All right.
I do.
So, Commissioner Schneider, you want to have the last word on these issues?
Yeah, just really quickly. Thank you, Commissioner Sky. I should also add, for a different hat I wear, I'm studying up on environmental justice communities, and I've been attending Cal Air Resources Board's EJ meetings, and they are also going to be looking heavily at solid waste facilities, as historically they often have been in EJ communities. So just another layer to look at, but thank you. I appreciate your comments.
So Jessica, hopefully Cal Recycle has caught a lot of the comments that have been made by several commissioners about issues that we want to agendize in the future. But for the moment, we're going to welcome Cal Recycle Director Wagner, who's going to speak to us for about 30 minutes, and hopefully we'll get a few questions toward the end. Commissioner Wagner, welcome. Are you there?
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me this morning. It is great. I can kind of see all of the faces here, really tiny little squares, but thank you so much for having me this morning. It's a pleasure to be joining the commission as we head into the fall, and especially a pleasure today. As many of you may know, Governor Newsom signed a couple of very key pieces of legislation yesterday that are very important to both the mission of Cal Recycle and the mission of the commission, and really reflect a lot of the hard work that we're doing here at the department, and a lot of the incredible thinking that you all have been doing at the commission. Additionally, before I get into the legislation, I want to highlight, just so that I'm in chronological order, the great work that the legislature and the governor did in the budget this year. Wanted to hopefully talk to you guys about it over the summer, but unfortunately there was so much budget work to do this year that the legislature and the governor were unable to complete this current budget year until September. And so, but very excited to get to share with you the budget actions and the legislative actions today. And hopefully just very briefly, and then open it up for a discussion with all of you in the commission. But wanted to highlight that the budget this year includes $270 million over 2 years to support the circular economy. And that's everything from the work that the very important work that we're going to be doing and helping local governments really truly launch their 1383 programs at the local level, as well as helping with infrastructure in organics and our food recovery grants. And then in addition, as many of you know, the governor's May revise directed the department to create an Office of Innovation, which we are working towards, and supplemented a lot of our really important market development programs like RMDZ and some of our other grants. So we are working very diligently right now internally over the last couple of weeks, pretty much from the day the governor signed the budget, I believe a week ago, 2 weeks ago, to yesterday, to really figure out how to get those dollars out the door very quickly, to really facilitate and spur the circular economy here in California and the important work that's going to help with California coming back stronger than ever from the pandemic. So look forward to an ongoing conversation with all of you on these points in the budget. I really hope to get to continue to engage with the Commission as you think through your recommendations on building the circular economy here in California. Just a quick overview on the legislation, because I know you guys are all very familiar with this, but we are, since I brought up organics, we are very excited to implement Senator Laird's SB 619. And let me tell you why we're excited to implement this. As many of you know, 1383 implementation is really truly the biggest change to California's solid waste law since we started recycling in the 1980s. But this is really truly a partnership. This is a state requirement, not a CalRecycle requirement, and this is all rowing in the same direction: local government, state government, not just CalRecycle, but all of our partners at the Air Board and the Water Board and state government facilities. And so we are really excited that Senator Laird and his engagements with local government came forward with 619 to really give local governments who have been challenged over the last couple of years with the pandemic and the instability to come and work with the state on their implementation. So that is one major piece of legislation. As you all know, SB 343 and the truth in labeling is huge for the state of California. You all have spent the last year plus really talking about how do we make recycling truly, truly meaningful here in the state of California again, and you've thought really diligently about that and put forward some important recommendations, and Senator Allen's bill really reflects the need to reinstate that faith in recycling. So we are excited to be working. That's less of a CalRecycle requirement and more of a statewide consumer bill, but I was very excited to see that that bill made it through the legislature, to see that the legislature agrees with you all and us that we need to make sure that recycling is truly meaningful for the consumers and the people of the state of California. A couple of pieces of legislation that are CalRecycle will be working towards implementation around the bottle bill that I think is really important to highlight, and kind of exciting because it works towards some of what we're trying to get at in evolving the bottle bill program. AB 962 by Senator Kamlager, I think, is a really exciting opportunity to explore different forms of source reduction. So getting at this issue not from recycling but reuse is an interesting and exciting opportunity for us to explore. And then AB 1311, which is a little bit wonkier, but I know there are a lot of wonks on this call, really goes to meeting some of these consumer challenges, especially in our rural areas and regions of the state, around accessibility to and ease of recycling for both consumers and our especially small recycling facilities. So looking forward to implementation of that bill. We have, I could go on all day. There was so much that was signed yesterday. I'm not entirely sure where to stop, but issues around compostability and again, the truth in advertising, and then bottle bill, just really truly shows that the legislature and the governor are very much focused on providing good and meaningful policy for the state of California, and really helping give new direction for all of us at CalRecycle, but all of you at the commission, and to our consumers about how we need to evolve and truly address our trash pollution and the climate challenges and other environmental challenges that come from our trash pollution. So with that, I just want to say thank you guys. Your report was truly, truly incredibly thoughtful. I was just reading it over again this weekend in preparation for talking with all of you today. And I just couldn't be more impressed with how much thought you all put into development of this report and your recommendations, and really hope that you all got a solid break after you release the report in July. I know many of you work on legislation as well, so you probably haven't had a break yet, but really, really thank you for all of your thoughtful work, and I think it really is clearly helping with the conversation within the legislature and nationally of where we need to go in recycling policy, big picture and in the minutia. So thank you so much. And with that, I will hopefully open it up for conversation.
Sure. Director Wagner, thank you so much for your presentation. We have several commissioners that have questions, but before we do that, I want to welcome the chair, Heidi Sanborn, to the conversation. Heidi, would you like to ask the first question?
Oh, I actually just want to thank the director for meeting with us today. It was perfect timing that we got such great news yesterday. And I'm very much excited to work with you on outlining how we can help drive a circular economy. Maybe that's part of the new recommendations that we'll focus on and we have on the agenda for later today, how we might do that. So I know there's many commissioners that have a lot of questions, so I'll just turn it over to them, and thank you for the time.
Heidi, why don't you pick up the ball from here? And I've got the order. Do you have the order of the questions?
I do. So it looks like Commissioner Lapis, and thank you again, Vice Chair, for taking over. I appreciate it. Want to go first?
I don't really have a question. I just wanted to thank you, Rachel, for all the work that you and your staff put into these bills. I don't think people realize how much work you need to put into each of these bills, and you don't even get to have a position on whether or not they should pass until the governor makes a decision. But you know, I think it's very easy for a lot of agencies to look at proposed legislation and say, well, that's just an unfunded mandate, or that's not something we've worked on, or you know, that's different than what we've done for the last 30 years. And I actually really appreciate that you and your staff have looked at every bill as, how could we make this work? Whether or not it's good policy is up to the governor, but how could we make this work? And I really appreciate that. So thank you to you and Zoe and Mindy and all the program staff and you know, the hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of phone calls.
Thank you so much, Nick. And I know many of you appreciate how messy and how much work the legislative process is. I luckily come to this job with a great love for the legislative process and spending more than 2 decades working on it. But it is truly, truly this incredible team at CalRecycle who really have gotten behind, you know, their mission and the goal of truly making California's environmental stewardship just front and center. And so I have really enjoyed joining CalRecycle, and just it is a true testament of just the incredible creative problem solvers that we have here at the department. And that just makes it a million times more fun for me.
Yeah,
so thank you, Nick. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I want to pile on to what Nick said. That's very appropriate, and it really is extremely difficult what you all do, and we ask a lot when we're technical assistance for bills, and there's so much coming at the staff so fast. So thank you and to all the staff that helped. This is a team win, really, all the way around. And so Commissioner Davis, I think you're next.
Yeah, thank you. I do have two quick wonky questions, and one has to do with CalRecycle in 2012 suspended the individual commingled bale studies. So MRFs that are recycling thermoforms now are getting paid less on their CRV redemption. They don't have the thermoforms in their CRV bales or in the PET bales. And I can send you a copy. I managed to get a copy of that suspension. It was due to lack of resources at the time at CalRecycle. And I would hope that you might take a look at that and initiate a reconsideration of suspending those individual bale studies so that the MRFs can be adequately compensated for their much cleaner PET bottle bales. And then my second question has to do with the procurement requirements under SB 1383. You mentioned the 619 process. You know, I think I'm one of the people who's concerned that we're going to be disrupting existing compost markets by flooding the markets with requests from cities and counties to purchase the required amounts of compost that are already being sold. I wonder if that 619 process might be an avenue to kind of back off on that January implementation of the procurement requirements. So, you know, two wonky questions, one about the individual commingled bale study and the other the 619 and procurement. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. I am not familiar with the 2012 commingled study, but would be happy to take a look at anything you want to send us and follow up with a conversation on that. And on the issue of the organics, we are very sensitive, obviously, to making sure that the existing good uses that compost is going to are not disrupted by the January 1 implementation date. However, I think the challenge with that is that the mandate is on the local governments as opposed to really at the state level as defining the specific avenues for each of these markets. So I want to be really careful that we're not inserting ourselves into the market decisions while at the same time acknowledging that January 1 is upon us and that we need to, we don't want to be disruptive because those markets clearly were there with good reason before January 1. That being said, I think, you know, 619, I think local governments will be rolling out their implementation of 1383 starting January 1. I don't know that and would venture a guess that on January 1 we are not going to have this huge demand for compost. I think on January 1 we're going to hopefully have a lot of local governments and jurisdictions that are rolling out implementation plans that we are still looking at. So I think a good ongoing conversation for us to have. And 619 might be an avenue to have that discussion, but I want to be really careful that we're not interjecting ourselves in a way that is counter to the regulations. Did that answer your question?
Well, we're getting there.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll figure it out as we go, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Commissioner Davis, you and I are going to work on the thermoforms, and so we'll be, I think, to the director giving some information and start a conversation, because I think all of us would like to see more thermoforms recycled. So there's a couple of different ways we can go about doing that, and we're looking forward to talking about that. Commissioner Ward and then Commissioner Dell, please.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Director Mackie Wagner, for coming and talking to us. I deeply appreciate that Governor Newsom just signed several important bills connected to the commission recommendation. But in the next 5 years, global capacity to produce virgin polymers for single-use products could grow by over 30%. These decisions to expand single-use products and packages are made by a relatively small number of companies and their banks and investors. In 2019, just 20 polymer companies produced the resin that accounted for more than half of all single-use plastic waste generated globally. The top 100 accounted for 90%. So in my opinion, if California does not swiftly and clearly establish a path to reduce the prevalence of these single-use products and packages in our economy, our recovery goals will be made largely unachievable. I feel that a targeted and consistent policy addressing or limiting single-use products and packages in California is necessary to reach the 75% goal. So for many reasons, the prevalence of single-use products and packages in California will need to be reduced significantly from current levels. And so I'm on a two-person working group trying to suggest advice. And so my question is, what kind of advice does this administration seek with regards to single-use products? For instance, we could engage the resin producer. We could address this by regulating or suggesting that we regulate specific products or functions like ink cartridges or AstroTurf. We could address producer responsibility or training and education. What kind of advice do you want us to provide with regards to single-use products and need to reduce?
Well, I think, the commission represents so many really important perspectives, from the recycling industry to our environmental and stewardship organizations that spend an incredible amount of time and thought invested in figuring out how to prevent the negative impacts of single-use products. And so I don't know that this is a terribly satisfying answer, but I want all of the advice. I mean, I think, and I think of it as valued perspective that is put on the table for the legislature and the governor to evaluate. And I know you guys hear me say this a lot, but the advice and perspective from your organizations as individuals and as the commission as a whole is very valued by both the legislature and the administration. And I think you need to put all of it on the table to give them a perspective. As you pointed out, a number of the commission's recommendations in the report were discussed, and many of them made it all the way to the governor's desk in legislation. So I don't want to foreclose any pathways by asking for any specific advice. The one thing that I would say, not that you asked, but the one thing that I would say that I've noticed that has been very impactful in the last year in terms of reduction of single use, and it has really brought a lot of energy from the industry and manufacturers, is the minimum content standards that we are implementing in beverage containers. And it has been amazing how much attention that the manufacturers have put towards that and the compliance with that. So one thing I would say is looking towards those policies that when you are saying we'd like to reduce single-use materials and the extraction of the resources, what is the policy pathway that you see that gets us there?
Could I follow on just briefly? So for instance, one of the recommendations of the commission was to reduce some of the ways that the state supports extractive industries, so that essentially we pay to help produce some of these products. And in considering options, for instance, I considered, well, what if we did a letter writing campaign and started writing letters to the producers and investors of these resins and tell them, with respect to California's recycling goals, these are bad investments. Well, that's engaging in a way in California's economic profile and decisions in a way that feels a little aggressive. And we need to do something definitive about single-use products, but I don't want to create enemies unnecessarily or to pick fights with folks who, you know, are an important part of California's economy. And these are all important considerations, and I'm not against any particular business, but we do need to reduce single-use plastics and engage on that front.
Well, and again, I think that's very much why the commission was created in the first place, not to speak for now Senator Eggman, but I think that the intent of the legislation was for the commission to bring forward all of the information that you, as members of the commission through your individual organizations, but also as a whole, have gathered and spend your time compiling. And so I don't know, I think that the intent of the legislation wasn't so much to move markets, but rather explain what you see in markets to the legislature. And like I said, it was an incredible amount of work that you all put into your recommendations, but it really is truly a reflection of each of your individuals and then the experience that you bring to the table as a group. So I think I would say that is, you know, communicating your knowledge is really what's going to be truly impactful.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner Dell, and then Sky.
Great. Yeah, thank you. I'd like to echo the thanks to the governor and to CalRecycle for supporting the passage and signing of important laws to make improvements in California's waste and pollution, the whole management of it. However, we've got a problem. It's still the wild, wild west of product claims and labels, and there's no sheriff in town. Exhibit A, there is a law that says that Walmart cannot sell foam coolers as biodegradable. They are actively doing it. I've got it right here. Just got this a couple weeks ago in Laguna Niguel, right? It's actively happening. There is no enforcement. SB 343 will be amazing if it is enforced. And I know that is not falling on CalRecycle's desk to do. But I have one request there, and that is that CalRecycle become an advocate with the state attorney generals and district attorneys to enforce these laws because they directly affect CalRecycle's mandate. And now I have a question for you. You mentioned AB 793 and said you think it seems to be a success that we're getting recycled content in PET bottles, but the recent report that just came out, I believe, is a failure. And I'd like to ask you how you are planning to enforce, how CalRecycle is planning to enforce the recycled content mandate. And as an NGO, I want to make it clear that environmental NGOs in this state will expect fines and not waivers. And I'm going to give you a statistic. Keurig reported 19.3 million pounds of PET use in the state of California and 0 recycled content. Keurig, which does have a class action lawsuit certified against it in California for deceptive labels, had $6.5 billion in gross profit last year. Their CEO made $9.2 million in 1 year, one person. And what I'd like to know from you is what are CalRecycle's enforcement plans and assurance these companies will not be given waivers on this law? Thank you.
Well, I'll start with the question. AB 793, the regulations have not been adopted yet. So I hope I'm not overly optimistic. And I don't believe I am because I have been working with our staff for nearly a year now on the implementation of those regulations. So I believe 793, and maybe it's worth clarifying, is a huge success from the perspective that the industry is paying very close attention to what is going to be in those regulations and is adjusting as we highlight for them what we believe is required by the statute. And so I think that you're going to see a marked improvement, and perhaps it's not as quick as you would like, but it is definitely a lot quicker than I've seen most statutes in the environmental arena work over the last decade. A bill that passed 2 years ago has suddenly made an entire market look at their practices and say, we recognize we have to change the way we do business. So I think that's a marked success, and maybe that's overly optimistic, but I think that that alone is a marked success. And I do believe that the regulations, once they are in effect, will have the desired impact and effect that the legislature had intended when passing that legislation. I don't know, does that answer your question?
Well, I think there were 49 companies that reported zero recycled content in 2020, right? And so what I would like is your assurance that these highly profitable companies will not be given waivers, and that when the regulations come into effect and there are supposed to be fines per pound for what they're not using, that in fact the companies will be fined and not given waivers.
Well, I can't provide an assurance on regulations that are still in development for implementation, but what I can provide an assurance on is that CalRecycle will implement and enforce the law as it was crafted and passed.
Yeah, I think I've seen CalRecycle. They don't have the rules yet in place to enforce anything, but I know Director Wagner did enforce on carpet when it hadn't been done before, and we greatly appreciate that. So I think we're almost at time. I don't want to hold you up. Did you need to go now, or do we have?
I can stay for just 1 or 2 more minutes.
Okay. Commissioner Sky had a question. I don't think it'll take too long.
I will be quick. I want to say first, I really appreciate the work that you and your team have done. This year has been really an incredible success in terms of legislative and budget priorities, and I particularly wanted to highlight, the investment from this administration and the $270 million package for circular economy is really welcome news. I was just wondering if you could briefly share your vision for how you'll prioritize particularly that circular economy funding, and if you can talk a little bit about how you envision partnering with local jurisdictions on the 1383 implementation component.
So we have had some initial, well, let me take a step back on that, and thank you for this question. My goal is, and priority is to get especially the local assistance dollars, and just for those of you who are maybe less aware, there was $60 million in the budget appropriated to CalRecycle for us to allocate for local assistance to local government. So I think that's, Commissioner Sky, I think that's the question you're asking. And my priority is to get those dollars out as quickly as possible to local governments, but do it in a way where we are really helping facilitate the launching of your programs. And so our staff have had some initial conversations with both the league and CSAC to kind of get a big picture thought. And I think that both associations will be going back to their members to talk about how they would like to see it done. But we really want to give a jump start to some of those key priorities around education and getting the programs launched. Additionally, as you know, we received money in for both co-digestion projects as well as compost and other infrastructure projects. And we're going back right now and evaluating what we've seen in the last couple of years for those programs to see if we want to tweak those. Again, my goal really is truly to use the dollars to quickly get them on the ground so that we can get that infrastructure in place that is most useful and will have the biggest bang for its buck for local governments, but moreover Californians, so that we get to ultimate success of 1383. My vision, my view is how do I get local governments to a place where they can succeed? What can we do to help facilitate local government success in this?
Okay.
And there will be engagement opportunities, but I think if it's primarily around local government, I think we are trying to get those dollars out quickly. So I think through the associations was probably the best way to do that.
Thank you. Those two areas were exactly what I was hoping to hear, and very welcome news. Thank you, Derek.
Great. Yeah, I don't plan on sitting on any of this money for very long. As Heidi knows, working in the legislature for many decades, working on legislation where we barely had 2 pennies to rub together to implement programs, I am very excited to have the legislative support and the governor's support on helping facilitate these programs and having the resources to do it. So we are aiming to get them out the door very quickly to help facilitate these programs.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. And I'll just end with a note that, everybody, I want to first thank you for the appreciation of the commission. The commission did work very, very hard last year. And we are planning to do another banner year of really good work and advice. But we're always here to help support as well. So as the agency's taking on unprecedented work and breaking new ground for guiding us to a circular economy, we want to be available too. So if there's anything we can do to help or advise on, please let us know and we'll be happy to do that. And you're welcome back anytime. So if you want to get something on the agenda, we'd love to have you.
Thank you. I always appreciate the invitation and the conversation with all of you. And again, and looking at your report again this weekend, really just appreciate how thoughtful you are as an advisory body. I think your deliberation has been of great value to the state of California, and we really appreciate that advice. And so I will definitely take you up on that opportunity to come back, hopefully again soon.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again, Director Wagner. We very much appreciate your time and look forward to continuing the work together.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thank you. Bye. Okay, so with that, we can go ahead and move on to agenda item number 8, which is a reporting out from our 2-person committees. We'll take them in order on the agenda. So if one person from each committee could please give us an update on what you've been working on and stay focused on, really what you've done and what you would like the commission to do, or if you have something you want to bring to us in the future so we can make sure we schedule time for that at upcoming meetings. So we'll start now with Commissioners Schneider and Ward on the Waste Prevention 2-person committee. Commissioner Ward?
We were not able to connect, so we haven't made any progress. And the last time and most of my focus was on the single-use plastics, which led to the question. So no report.
Okay, but I did see that you had done some work on some drafts of letters and things. So that's something that, Commissioner Schneider, do you want to say something?
I would only say, and I apologize to Ted, my city did approve creating an emergency regulation on artificial turf. It's actually now coming forward to council on Tuesday. So most of my time has been spent collecting information on all of the impacts of plastics in the external environment. So moving ahead on that.
What is the ordinance?
Well, the emergency ordinance will be to create a moratorium on the placement of artificial turf until the city has a chance to identify all of the risks and present those risks to the public and provide alternatives in the time of a permanent drought. Most likely we won't permanently ban artificial turf, but we will try to educate the public of just how many risks there are to it when it's outside. And I'm getting information from all over the world, and how many cities have actually begun to ban artificial turf throughout the US and in some cases in Europe.
Yep.
So it's just amazing how much research is out there. And sorry, Ted, it's just taken up a huge amount of my time.
It's okay. I just want to apologize for the fuzzy line, just recognizing that Ann and I serve both on the Waste Prevention Committee and the single-use plastics thing, so we kind of
Oh,
fuzz.
I'm sorry. Yeah, there we go. So I jumped straight into single-use plastic.
Well, that's okay, because they're kind of, we might as well just finish that up, which is number 11. But I
Yeah,
would
so
say-
based on what the director, Mackie Wagner, just suggested, I think we'll come back for a discussion both on addressing resins and specific products or functions. Those, and then possibly some discussion about producer responsibility, because those all seem to be angles that will need to be addressed one way or another to address single-use plastics.
And I would only add that perhaps we'll go back to the early EPR stuff and looking at those products that are most toxic or the greatest contaminants.
Okay. Well, I would say that artificial turf is becoming a big issue with this drought. We're starting to see that put out on landscapes outside all over California. And I am very concerned about the microplastics and the chemicals in those products eroding into the soil and causing long-term problems that we can't undo. So I'm very interested in this, and I think I shared with Commissioner Schneider an article I saw that the old town I used to live in, Wayland, Massachusetts, just banned new AstroTurf from being put down for the next 3 years until they do more investigation. So that's another
Can
area.
I add through the chair? I'm sorry, add one more thing because it relates to this committee. I have research, but I have to verify it, that artificial turf in the sun, as it ages, gives off more and more methane, as well as another volatile organic compounds. So I have to verify that, but it's become another GHG creator.
Right, which is one of our tasks, is source reduction, recycling rates, and GHG. And yeah, I think this could use some attention, that particular product. Okay, so we'll move on then. We've addressed 1 and 11. We'll now move on to number 2, which is the and by the way, commissioners, if you have any comments on anything you're hearing, feel free to put it in the chat and we'll discuss it. The report out from the report structure and editing, plus HHW, EPR, and other items. That's both Commissioner Ward and I. Do you want to?
I don't think we have much to report. I mean, a lot of the discussions for the report structure and the committee structure that has all happened at the open meetings, and we've now gone to the committee of the whole. We are anticipating doing at the last meeting. We decided we were going to continue the January and July cycle on the productions of the reports. And once again, it'll all be based on policy recommendations and then explanatory text linking it together in front. That's pretty much all I have.
As things that got done, and then just continue on with where we have existing policy and adding to them or changing them as we go. So maybe that's something you and I can work on.
I'd be happy to work with you on that. And in a similar vein, some of the discussions regarding some of the other committees have essentially followed the same thing. And I assume we're not the only two-person committee that's doing that, essentially looking at what just happened, what are the recommendations we still need to move forward.
Yep, because some of ours really did get addressed, but we should have agreement from the commission that they were fully addressed and go back and show everybody what we think got addressed, why, where, and agree, and then we can move those out of the next report and just put them as in the back, check the box. Okay, so that we will leave that for now. Item 3 is the liaison with the Oregon DEQ. That's Commissioners Toyota and Lapis, and I know that we did schedule David Alloway from Oregon to come and present to us on the 3rd of November. So if there's anything other to report than that, that's it. Okay. So we will see them on November 3rd. Item 4 is C&D market development. That is myself and Commissioner Toyota. Commissioner Toyota, do you want to address the C&D?
The only C&D we've really, I think, looked at in the last 2 weeks is still the wallboard, the drywall, and I'm going to be honest and let you know that the association, the drywall associations have really kind of stepped up. They're almost ready to bring forward a policy that's theirs for us to look at, and I can't say that I have really had to do much work on that. I mean, it's really come down to the Gypsum Association and them doing really all the heavy work on what they can do. So we hope to see a policy from them very soon and bring that, take a look at that and bring back some recommendations around that. But I do want to give them credit for that.
I agree, and I think we heard a comment last time from Michael Gross at Zanker that they had really partnered with him on a project. So hopefully we'll get more information back soon on that, and we really appreciate their working with us on this. Okay, so we'll move on then to 5, carpet and flooring. Commissioner Davis and I are on that. Commissioner Davis, you and I have not had time to really talk about this too much. We were kind of waiting to see what happened. I can say that I'm getting a lot of new information about how countries around the world are literally banning the LVT flooring because it is so dangerous. Well, they consider it toxic. And that is becoming a very, it's actually pushing carpet out of the market, and it's not recyclable at all. And so that really does bring us to this discussion of, should there be a broader flooring proposal? Because now we've got basically an alternative to carpet that's gobbling up the carpet market, that's got no management program at all and has a toxics issue. So I would like to really start digging into that. And also, I don't know what AstroTurf really is. It's a ground cover. It also gets used on concrete. So I don't know if you would all consider that a flooring or more of a single-use plastic. But that's, I guess I just throw it open for any comments or suggestions from anyone. But I think we have a bigger flooring issue. It's not just carpet now. It really is the LVT flooring. Commissioner Ward and then Commissioner Dell.
Well, and this is really part of the reason why I think there's an appropriate focus on resin production, because essentially resin production, once you've produced it, you're eager to sell it to whoever will buy it for whatever purpose. And if we don't have some restriction on how that can be used or some controls on the market, then it will be flooded and it will cheaply flood out existing, perhaps more renewable economies. And that this will be an ongoing problem, and it'll be a little bit like whack-a-mole. Sometimes it's carpet, sometimes it's single-use products, but it's all about the resin production.
Thank you. Commissioner Dell?
I was about to Google it, but I believe the EPA's definition around plastics are durables and non-durables. And I do think that we should be careful in using the word single-use plastic, because their definition of durables and non-durables, I think, is 2 years. I can Google it after I make this comment just to confirm this. But one assumes vinyl flooring would last more than 2 years. I do think, I do have a problem with some of their reporting, though, because they would say like a plastic chair that you could buy for $1.99 is a durable, but those don't last 2 years. There's so many, plastic is so cheap, right? That things that used to be durables, even supposedly a durable plastic cup you can buy for, 10 cents at the dollar store, is really disposable. But really, I think the 2 year, effectively the 2 year mark would be durables and non-durables. And then single-use plastics, I don't think there's a legal definition, but that would really, be just a single use with even a shorter time frame.
Okay, thank you. And Commissioner Oseguera, and then we'll take 2 public comments.
I was just going to mention that I guess the word AstroTurf, I don't know if that's, quite the definition now regarding artificial type of lawns for athletics, or as you're mentioning, even for different settings. So we should look into what is the new, description of that material. Because I think the AstroTurf was probably a past, description of a material, so we should probably dive deeper into that.
Yeah, I haven't had any time. I don't know. I'm probably showing my age.
Through the chair, this is Anne. Actually, in our documents, we've been calling it synthetic turf. and AstroTurf, I just referred to the shorter way of saying it because there's multiple types so far in my research. So much appreciated on the comment. Try to find the generic term.
Synthetic turf.
And I just looked at the EPA regs, and they define durables as 3 years.
Thank you. Smart bunch. That's why I threw it out to all of you. Thank you. Okay, and so it looks like we've got 2 public comments, and they're regarding incinerated plastic and cement manufacturing. I'm not sure how this would apply to this portion, but we'll go ahead and listen to them and see if they're directly relating to what we're talking about.
Chair, if I can clarify, because I think that at least one of those comments was made back in our earlier discussion. It may relate actually to my and Commissioner Osigura's update.
Okay, then we'll wait. And I wasn't here earlier, so thank you for saying that. We'll just hold off on those public comments then until we get to, well, that's actually the next item. So I don't think there's anything else on carpet and flooring anyway. So we'll move on to organic materials and renewable technologies. And this is for Commissioner Sky and Osigura, who have taken on the very difficult task of dealing with these alternative technologies. So we'll go ahead and turn it over to you and then take public comments.
Thank you. And I gave kind of a impromptu update earlier, so I'll just recap that. Our focus is on those technologies that do meet the definition of recycling, so we're not looking at technologies like transformation or EMSW conversion or RDF. We're going to continue to focus on areas where there's barriers to true recycling, whether it's chemical recycling or alternative technologies or biomass conversion. And the focus really is on bringing more facilities to market that can help address materials that otherwise would be disposed. So that would be a barrier to the state meeting our goals on recycling and organic waste diversion. And the other aspect to it, and several commissioners echoed this sentiment, is looking at best practices for those facilities to make sure that we're not just creating kind of a blanket pathway for facilities, but looking at how we regulate them to ensure that they're implemented in a way that's protecting public health and safety, that is addressing environmental justice. And so I mentioned that there's a relatively good template that LA County is implementing in terms of permitting sustainable infrastructure within LA County that I think could serve as a model statewide. And Commissioner Osigura, I don't know if you wanted to add anything onto that.
No, I think you've explained it well, Kobe. The discussion that we've had is ensuring that as we also, if we have, presentations or we visit facilities, that those facilities are at scale, that we're able to see a functioning, facility, and one that can actually is doing what they say the facility is intended to do. I think someone else here made a comment regarding that, right? It's not, some specific potential technology that is in its initial stages that really there is no indication whether it's going to be successful or not, and that there is a functioning facility that can be visited, observed, and also view the performance of what they're intending to do.
And this came up in the context, Chair Sanborn, of the data request. There was a request for information about what technologies would meet the 3-part test and still be considered recycling, and in particular, data about actual facilities in California. And it seemed like there was also interest in getting information about facilities that are considered transformation or EMSW conversion, just so that we have that context. But I think that's the reference to the 2 public comments, so I wanted to mention that.
Great, thank you very much. So why don't we go ahead now and hear the 2 comments?
The first comment is from Anonymous, and it reads, plastic waste is being incinerated in California in cement kilns. See Lehigh Southwest Cement Company in Kern County. The second comment is from Bruce at the California-Nevada Cement Association. It reads, use of MRF residual as an engineered municipal solid waste is allowed in California, and chlorine-containing plastics are not allowed by statute, and its use does not count as recycling. The fuel replaces coal, and emissions are monitored, and facilities do comply with all state and local emission limits. This is a great program that allows the industry to reduce any reliance on coal. I'm happy to provide a presentation if you would like to better understand the facts around cement manufacturing.
Thank you. I'm not really, I mean, to me, the cement manufacturing isn't our focus. It's our focus is if it's going to achieve recycling, but it's not. So because it's combustion, correct, Commissioner Segura? So and Sky. So I think unless somebody else would like to hear something like that, I'm not really. I appreciate the offer. We can certainly call you back if need be. So with that, I think then we'll just wait for another update on what's happening with LA County and what can be shared. Sounds like, okay, thank you very much. So we'll move on to 7, which is food waste prevention and rescue, exports, and the precautionary principle. And this is Commissioners Sky and Lapis. So if one of you could give us an update on that.
So I think on that part, we had a recommendation that was included in our July report. I don't know if there's additional work that will result in additional recommendations with Commissioner Lapis. Do you have any thoughts on that?
No.
So would it be, maybe it would be helpful to let us know if you think all these things have been addressed through the budget and the existing report, and if so, I mean, we can keep the position for this 2-person committee open in case something else comes up, or just it sounds like there isn't much more work to do then.
I think what we can do is not necessarily keep it on the report, but if an issue comes up that can be referred to our committee, we can take it up again.
Agreed. Sounds good. Okay. We'll move on then to number 8, organic materials infrastructure. This used to be Commissioner Potashner and Osagura, but since he's no longer on the commission over at Schnitzer, I don't know if there's anybody else joining you, Commissioner Osagura, if it's just you are the organics materials person. I thought actually it was Commissioner Kalpikoff was working on organics as well. Did I get that right?
I think that is correct. I know I wasn't, unfortunately, I wasn't able to join last commission meeting. So really nothing to report on this, but definitely I'll get together with Commissioner Kalpikoff and start moving forward.
Great. If you can give us updates on, you know, how that money's getting out and if there's anything we can do to give advice on that, as Commissioner Sky had raised earlier, that would be great.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll change that from Potashner to Kalpikoff on the next agenda.
Thank you.
Great. All right, and then we have number 9 is the bottle bill issues, and this is Commissioners Ward and Vice Chair Valle.
Ted, I've got a quick question, Ted, before we sort of report out. A question, as we all know, the bottle bill has been kicked around for decades. Both Ted and I have significant relationships with staff members at the legislature, both Assembly and Senate level. To what extent can our committee meet and confer with certain offices at the state level? I just want to throw that out because it is such a controversial issue that really needs change.
Good question. You can meet with all the state people. I believe it's not, I mean, I'll ask for Cal Recycle to give us any legal advice if that's, I mean, I think the 2-person committees were only supposed to confer with themselves. And then outside of that, it's safer to do it in public. So if you would like, I think maybe what we do is just have you ask Cal Recycle, we want to do this, we want to meet with this group. Is there any problem with that, or does it have to be done at a commission or a committee of the whole meeting? And
All right, so
Commissioner
that's a
Sky,
fair
if you wanna, sorry.
I'm sorry, no, that's a fair question. Is there anybody at CalRecycle that can give us some guidance?
I don't know if Zoe's on or
Yes,
somebody
I'm
from
on.
Cal-
Can you hear me okay? I was having connectivity issues earlier.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Great. We'll talk to our team and we'll get back to you. Don't have an answer at this time.
Thank you. And I
Yeah.
think in the meantime, you can just send us emails and,
Sure.
and send it off to Zoe and then get official answers in writing so that we can just keep moving. But I agree, you know, this has been the perpetual hot potato that I think we're all ready to start, you know, putting down and getting it right. So let's not ignore the hardest thing to do. It's probably the most important thing to do. So let's keep chipping away at it.
Okay,
What-
we'll be in touch with CalRecycle staff. Ted, anything else you want to add?
Well, just the general summary is that we will look at the bill that got passed from Assemblymember Wood and the other changes in the budget and look at what recommendations essentially have good headway and what remain on the table. Be updating that.
Great. Okay, and Commissioner Sky, did you want to say something?
Just a clarification for the expectation for our two-person committees, because I think we have been meeting and getting information from stakeholders, and I thought the intent was to not have entire commissions, you know, bogged down with presentations and getting information. So I know that my two-person committee has been doing that, and I believe other two-person committees have been doing the same.
Yeah, so my understanding is, I have to go back and refresh myself on all this, but I think, yeah, I think we better get it final again. I honestly can't remember. It seems, and then there's this awkwardness that all of us, you know, are in this field and we talk to people outside of the commission, not just as commissioners. So maybe we should revisit that and have CalRecycle give us a refresher, and I'll share it with everybody on what we are not allowed to do as two-person committees outside of the public view. That's really what this is about, is doing information gathering and drafting of policy outside of public view and then bringing it to the public view from that two-person committee. Commissioner Lapis, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just thinking from a process perspective as we move forward, maybe we could, ahead of these meetings, ask everybody if you know, if a two-person committee has an update, and then they could be on the agenda so we don't have to go through every committee. But
I agree.
maybe put out a request a week ahead of time or something.
I'd actually, what I'd rather do is have it all done in writing, that everyone can read it and then ask questions. That would be a much more efficient use of time, because they can be very short, just a couple of sentences really. And then commissioners can ask questions of other commissioners. But we'd have to all agree to that, because I know everybody's time is limited and I don't want to not have a report out because somebody didn't have time to give us information. But it would have to be very easy in the same format where I could clearly just put it into a single document. It was easy for everybody to follow and read. And then we could publish it too. It could be public on the Google Doc. Would that
So I think
be?
that's a great idea as well, but I feel like we probably shouldn't just go through the entire list every time, or we're going to get bogged down in it.
Totally agree. All right, so why don't we just go ahead and do that for next time? I'll just send out an email the week in advance, ask for a couple sentences. I'll put it in a document and upload it to Google Docs, and then everybody gets to read it before the meeting. Or you just tell us we don't have an update. But this is also a way to keep track of all these two-person committees, because there's so many right now. It's kind of hard, so I'm just going to leave them on the agenda if that's okay. Anything else on the bottle bill? Okay. Thermoforms, Davis and Sanborn. I'll just say this, that John and I have talked a couple times. I've been talking with quite a few of the stakeholders and even legislators about what we could possibly do to move this. This really needs to get resolved, but it is commingled with the bottle bill a little bit. So I'm talking to quite a few people, and Commissioner Davis drafted a possible policy that he and I are going to go over next week, and then we're going to start running by different stakeholders to see if we're getting there. And we hope to have a recommendation soon so that hopefully whatever bill happens next year, we can have it be workable. So is there any questions on that? Are there any commissioners? Okay. Single-use plastics we've done. So right to repair, Davison Ward, any update on that?
John's done some good work. John, you want to give this update?
Yeah, I think the big news on right to repair is that the Federal Trade Commission has adopted a policy to increase its enforcement of existing law, but also as a part of that, they looked at all of the claims and allegations made by manufacturers, particularly electronic manufacturers, about intellectual property rights protection, about the dangers of people repairing their devices, and so on. It's the same list of objections that arose in the California Assembly Committee hearing the most recent version of the bill. The Federal Trade Commission found that the majority of those claims were without merit. They were unsubstantiated. The Federal Trade Commission also offered to work with state legislatures who would like to move forward with right to repair. So yeah, we're drafting a recommendation around that FTC report and their offer to work with states, and also their finding that most of the claims are without warrant. And then we're also restating Commission recommendations that did not move forward, including repair information on the state agency by Recycle, and labeling around repair, including embedding labels in products that could be read by the owners of products or people recycling the products, so that it's not just a label on a package, but it's actually something like a QR code that would could be kept current, updated from manufacturers. So we should have something for the committee of the whole to look at. I think Commissioner Ward and I think we're in concurrence on that.
Great, because it doesn't seem like we're having any success in the legislature to date on right to repair. So hopefully we can come up with some recommendations that would be workable.
But I did want to highlight to everybody what John just said about the potential for a QR code or something like that. The idea is that we have lots of different needs to get information to the customer about what's the right way to dispose of the material, the recycled content, et cetera. And so what you kind of want is some generic way where you can have a single label that people can then look up the information, and that information can be updated as things change, or as situations change, or as regulations change. I know that labeling is always a big issue and an area of common concern, and so it seemed to me that if we could build momentum for a standardized label that could have internet lookup potential, that could be an avenue we could all support potentially.
That's great. I mean, the one thing I can say for sure is the public, when they're properly informed, they can help us because they'll make better purchasing decisions when they're fully informed of what's in the product. Is it recyclable? Is it repairable? But right now they can't tell, and so they're guessing. And that
yeah, the FTC report actually talks about that, and how having labeling in France around repairability is influencing decisions. And for example, you can have a $1,000 mobile phone that gets a repair rating of 0, or a $800 mobile phone that gets a repair rating of 6 or 7. That kind of information does influence decisions, absolutely.
Yep, and then we truly have a free market where the people can help us vote with their dollars by making good choices, because they're making informed choices. Okay, great, good update. Next is organics contamination, Kalpakoff and Toyota, I believe, commissioners. You want to talk about that? Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, I'll start really quick. and kick it back to Commissioner Toyota. But we met about a week ago to discuss the compostable plastics in the feedstock for the organics collection on routes, and what facilities don't allow compostable organics, what facilities do, and trying to come up with a means to keep the feedstock clean so we don't end up with, obviously, some of the challenges we're seeing with the blue cart today. And I did reach out to a couple companies who do or are allowing it in the waste stream, but they're forced to remove it on the back end at the facility, and that that becomes a challenge and a problem. But you look into the some of the thought processes, they're going to gain more organics by allowing a plastic bag in the organics waste stream versus and then having the expense in the back end to pull it out, right? And I think that's one of the challenges that Commissioner Toyota and I are kind of working through right now.
Okay. Yeah, it's not going to be easy.
No, not with 1383. With the, their model ordinance, their model franchise has the compostable plastics as in the definition of organics, and there are certainly facilities that are organic certified that cannot take that feedstock. So it's some conflicting information for municipalities as they move through these regulations.
Okay. Commissioner Toyota, any updates to add to that?
Well, no, that about covers it.
Okay, great. I do want to say that it looks like there's a public comment on artificial turf, which was back on kind of item 11. So maybe we should go back to that comment real quick, and then we'll go to Commissioner Ward.
Yes, the public comment is from David Bender at Circular Polymers. It reads, in regards to the Commissioner's comments on artificial turf, Circular Polymers can recycle all of the artificial turf in California if there was an EPR for turf. Circular Polymers already has the processing equipment to process turf, as well as customers who have approved our turf product. Turf is simply outdoor carpet and should be added to the California Carpet EPR program or separately legislated. Best regards, David Bender.
Okay, so we have a recycler asking for the AstroTurf to be added to the CARE program, it sounds like. So that's something Commissioner Davis and I will consider. Thank you very much for your comment, David Bender. And then we'll move on to Commissioner Ward.
Just a comment on the organics contamination. To me, the focus really should be in the next few years demonstrating some plastic bag that could receive food waste or because that appears to be the linchpin of a lot of food recovery programs. You want to keep that kitchen bucket clean, and a lot of people almost kind of demand that there be a removable liner of that material, and yet those materials are often then contaminants and they need to be sorted out at the back end. So to me, if we don't have a truly compostable liner bag for a food waste bucket, then the whole discussion about what is a compostable plastic is kind of a non-starter, because if those aren't really compostable, then nothing is. The program's going to hinge on the function of that liner bag. So I don't know if there's a way to do a kind of a moonshot to demonstrate that, but to me, that is the item that has to work as either a compostable plastic or compostable plastics as a category don't work, my perspective.
Yeah, I understand your point, Commissioner Ward. I don't know how this affects it, but remember that right now CalRecycle will allow any plastic bag to be that liner. It doesn't have to be compostable, as long as I can get my waste hauler, the people at the compost facility, to sign off that they can pull those plastic bags from the grocery store, whatever kind of bag it is, out at the back end. All that's allowable right now.
Okay, we're running out of time to get on to the last couple of items, so I'm going to ask, is there anything else on this item? Okay, thank you very much, and we'll move on. I think Commissioner Snyder, you had a comment real quick, and then we'll move on to methane.
It's that In some of our communities, plastic bags, biodegradable or not, are a contaminant to the anaerobic digestion process. That goes back to the using one messaging out there. Since San Francisco uses compostable bags and people come to my community, the 3 communities, including one adjacent to San Francisco, with having been trained to use biodegradable plastic bags, and that it really is a problem in the system that they're now living in. So we just use newspaper. Don't know why we need bags at all.
Yeah, that would be my hope, something like that. Okay, we'll have to move on to methane emissions, and this is Commissioners Cadena and Davis. Any update there?
Yeah, I can start. Yeah, we should have a draft for the Committee of the Whole meeting. We've talked a couple times and have a pretty complete draft already, but essentially we're looking at trying to get an update on the Air Resources Board emission reduction factors to include short-life climate pollutants, and then working with Cal Recycle to get information out when they get notice of projects. They're a responsible agency under CEQA, so let Cal Recycle inform the CEQA lead agency of the emission reduction benefits of the greenhouse gas reduction benefits and methane reduction as a short-life climate pollutant. So we should have something ready for the Committee on the Whole.
Okay, are you addressing at all that plastics just coming from fossil fuel? I'm learning a lot in my other world on energy about just how much methane is being released through the entire system for gas and oil extraction, and it's very...
That's a new angle that we could take a look at. Cal Recycle's recycling emission reduction factors model WARM, and frankly, I'd have to go back and look and see if the data that EPA's WARM uses includes methane losses associated with petroleum. I'm not sure. Good question.
Well, just so everybody knows, this was the news to me, that apparently utilities do not and are not required to calculate methane emissions from anything except their own exact facilities. So everything, all the methane that was emitted erroneously throughout the entire process of extraction and transport to us does not get calculated in the emissions that we're responsible for, even though we're the ones that bought the product. I don't see that being reasonable, because if nobody's buying the product, that whole process isn't happening. But that's how it's calculated. So it'd be interesting to know on plastics how that works.
Yeah, we could take up consumption-based emission calculations, but and WARM is a life cycle model, so I think we start with seeing did WARM utilize that, because the state's recycling emission reduction factors are parallel WARM. They probably haven't been updated, so they need to be updated, but we could raise that more extensive life cycle methane emission. I did moderate a session or a lunch session at the CRA conference using carbon mapping, the Carbon Mapper, where the state's actually using satellites now to monitor emissions, and it's not limited to California, although the focus is California, so that they're able to look at sources of emissions, and oil fields are a huge source, just that initial extraction. So there's information coming on that, but we can take a look at it.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And I think that's it for the questions. The only thing I missed earlier was the public comment about ink cartridges. This was also been brought to my attention. Was there a discussion of whether ink cartridges would belong in any of the 2-person committees? The reuse committee is what I thought about, waste prevention, since it seems those cartridges are reusable, and
it's also a single-use plastics issue. So yeah, that folded into my question to Director Mikey Wagner. Yeah.
Could be a repair issue too, right? You can't replace your cartridge, your printer is useless. So.
At the core, it's a waste prevention, because they're reusing them instead of not. So maybe can we put that in the Ward Schneider box for, okay, very good. Thank you very much. Just want to make sure they have a place to follow up, since we have an infrastructure in California that's in jeopardy because of that, you know, the products being sold that are mislabeled, et cetera. Okay, so we have to move on. Thank you very much, everybody. And we'll develop a format so you can all report in writing, and we'll pull that together for the next time. So thank you for that suggestion, Commissioner Lapis. We'll move on to agenda item 9. This is the labeling media enforcement updates, and this is Commissioner Dell. We don't have the committees anymore, but this is, she's been the lead on this, so I just assume, unless commissioners tell me otherwise, we'll go ahead and let her be lead. This is something she's very interested in, and she's going to give us a presentation today and ask us for some feedback. So I'll turn it over to Commissioner Dell.
Thanks. You know, I actually gave this presentation before, and I'm not sure where we are on time, 11:21 on the whole agenda. A couple commissioners weren't here, maybe Commissioner Oseguera or Commissioner Dunleavy, but now he's not here again. Does everyone recall? Should I pull it up on my screen? I can do that.
I would do it real quick. I think just refresh us, because we've had a long summer off and a lot of things happen.
Okay, well, I just gave it recently. Okay, so getting to share my screen. So this was the proposal that I made, that the commission, because we're an independent commission, could reach out to companies that are currently labeling products with labels that are not legal. So this has nothing to do with SB 343. This is based on today's laws in California and in based on the FTC Green Guides. And now I'm going to get to share my screen and like cross my fingers. Okay, is that seen?
Yes.
Can everyone see it? Okay, great. Okay, so this is, I just, gave this a couple weeks ago. And actually, I want to echo what Commissioner Schneider said. She made the point about what I think what the county does around single-use plastics and enforcing laws in her county. And I think she said the first step was they reach out to businesses, and they reach out to businesses and say, please stop doing this, right? Please correct. And this is actually exactly what I'm proposing here, that we as an independent commission respectfully reach out to companies that are currently not correctly labeling their products. And they're labeling them as recyclable. We could also do compostable based on existing laws. This is all based on existing laws, not the new laws that were passed, and ask them to change it. I want to make it clear to anyone listening, this is not an anti-plastics initiative. It's an anti-contamination initiative. See the picture of the guy walking on the Murph rollerblade cutter things. I don't know the exact term. This is what workers in Murphs are having to deal with. And I love that Commissioner Valle said that they were going to actually make a presentation to send out to people to show what workers have to deal with when you put contamination in bins. And so there's multi-parts to this. Cal Recycle is in charge of education, as are each of the Murphs and cities. But as an independent commission, I think we can reach out to these companies and say, please change these now. And the reality is no one else is. No one else is doing this. Yes, there's a few lawsuits by NGOs, including the Last Beach Cleanup with one organization, but it's very difficult to do that. And what we really need is enforcement, which we've talked about, and then also just proactive engagement and calling out the companies and saying, please change these. And so just to click through, this is the wrong presentation that I brought up. This is actually about, I've got to stop sharing my screen. This is the one I wanted to do next time. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm just going to vocalize. Hopefully you'll all remember that there was a presentation. The idea would be to write respectful letters to Aldi and say, please stop labeling this as recyclable, to Freshly, who has a goop bag and it says recyclable. Imagine someone just puts this goop bag. I know it's non-toxic, but puts it in their recycle bin. I'm telling you, I think my neighbors are probably doing that, as well as a host of other items. And so I've drafted a letter to Aldi that we can discuss. But first, what we decided in the last meeting was that we would raise this again and take a vote. And I respectfully put it to the commission, and you all can decide. Is this something that we would like this commission to be a voice of respectfully asking product companies to correct their existing labels now to reduce contamination or reduce consumer confusion? If the commission votes yes, I volunteer to do it. I think I've proven over the last year that I put hundreds of hours into doing the MERP spreadsheet and so on. And so there you can have confidence that I'll actually follow through. But this will all be quick initiative for the commission to do, to look at each month or each 2 weeks when we meet. Basically, I'll just give an update and say, okay, you know, these were sent out. Did we get a response or not? And then put it to the commission of who else would you like to send letters to? Commissioner Oseguera, I think over the summer or September, sent out some pictures of products. I actually think they were hazardous waste that were labeled as recyclable. Yeah, those should definitely be taken up by the authorities. But we as a commission can also reach out to the companies and say, please change this, or we will take it up to the authorities. So it's a proactive way where our commission can try to, you know, correct labels now. So with that, I'll give it back to you, Commissioner. We could look at the letter so that you can see what I'm talking about. It wouldn't be a big, just to summarize, it wouldn't be a big effort by the commission. I'm volunteering to do it. It would be all the commission's decision. Jan doesn't just make unilateral decisions on who to send letters to. It's not an anti-plastics initiative. It's an anti-contamination initiative. And that's pretty much the summary. So we could look at the letter before you choose to vote, or we could just take a vote now.
We've got a few commissioners with comments. So in summary, Commissioner Dell is suggesting that we are proposing that she would be able to provide draft letters with examples of packaging that's not meeting current labeling laws in the interim before 343 or other bills are going into effect, and simply inform companies that we are aware that it is not, these are not labels that match FTC guidelines or other rules, and we cite those. And then we ask, you know, we can CC whomever, we could CC CalRecycle so they know, we can CC the Attorney General, we can CC the legislature, whatever you think is important. So we'll go ahead and turn it over now to a couple commissioners, Ward and then Valle.
One, I think this is a great proposal. Thanks, Jan. And I'd love to see the draft letters, but getting into a detailed question, wondering if the commission has the ability to incorporate the adopted logo into a letterhead and what return address we put on that letterhead. If they reply to this letter, does it go to CalRecycle? Or are we starting to engage in a dialogue? That's the question.
Right. So I don't think it should go to CalRecycle. We're an independent commission, and that does become the question, right? Who is sending it out? How are we getting it back? Do we want to do that? And I'm volunteering to do it as the last beach cleanup and be the point of contact on that. I don't think we've set up a Gmail or anything, have we, for the commission? But I don't think we can't put it on CalRecycle to manage.
So we can take the logo we already did and do a little letterhead. I think that's appropriate. I personally do not feel comfortable sending letters without fully informing CalRecycle and that without having a full public vetting of that letter. If it's on behalf of this entire commission, everybody should see them and be comfortable with them to be willing to put the commission's name on it. So I can probably share my screen because we did put these in the Google Documents for today. If you would like me to share the draft. Okay, thank you. Somebody let me be the presenter. So let's see, labeling Aldi letter. So this is the draft letter that we can certainly put the logo on at the top. And again, its subject line is request for correction of recyclable label on plastic bags. And again, we could take specific comments on this now. We can read it out loud, but the general thought was to show them the actual pictures of what was the problem, citing real law, California Business Code, etc. And I know Commissioner Dell has access to attorneys as well, so she's double checking that. And then next steps, our suggestion, and this is Commissioner Valle, you haven't heard this yet, so let us know if you're okay with this. But we thought it would be Vice Chair Valle, who's also very interested in these issues, and Commissioner Dell. I wouldn't want less than 2 people being responded to, and I don't think we need anything in snail mail. That's just paper and trees and unnecessary. This isn't legal. We need it quickly and electronically so we can quickly email all this out to everybody anyway and upload them. So that would be our suggestion, but we're happy to, you know, take other thoughts. So Commissioner, I think, who's next? Commissioner Valle, did you want to say something?
Yeah, sure. Anecdotally, let me tell you, back in the early 80s when the corporation where I currently work was in its infancy, I wrote letters after being discouraged by a lot of foundations who wouldn't fund the concept of doing a recycling center that was community-based and a nonprofit. And I got a lot of practice because we got a lot of letters from a lot of foundations. I wrote a letter to the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation that was very terse and direct. And as a result of that, the foundation was so upset that they actually sent a representative out to speak with me. The outcome of that was William and Flora Hewlett was the first foundation to fund TriSet. But the reason they funded it was because I raised the attention of somebody who read the letter and the terse way that I presented my rejection. So that really woke people up. So I think a real key, I like the idea, I like the concept. The real key is TriSet then achieved great success when I had other people who had a different attitude and a different way of writing letters that was more professional and direct, explained the frustration, but simultaneously created solutions and presented solutions. So I think that the critical issue here is the construction of the letter, the content of the letter, the professionalism, how it's presented and structured. I would need more time to review the letter because I could barely, for example, read the example that's on the board. But I like the concept in general, and I think it makes a great deal of sense. If we're going to do this, we're probably going to pursue this to a lot of other industries, not just plastics, but potentially others. So it opens up a new mechanism for communicating with manufacturers and sending and delivering our message. But I want to make sure that it's done well and it's done professionally, and that's really critical.
I completely agree, and we can stop. Let's see, how do I stop share? I don't want to not. I'll try it. Let's see. Oh, no, it wants me to leave the meeting. I don't know how to stop the share. I agree. If you would be willing to work with Commissioner Dell, Commissioner Vice Chair Valle, I think that would be a great 2-person working group to take this letter. I have already given her my thoughts on this, and I would love to hear yours and then have this come back to the commission, the meeting of the Committee of the Whole on the 20th for our full review and approval, and we can send it out in advance, post it on the public space, so we're all very clear, and everybody would have to take the time to read it in advance and have your comments ready, because we can edit it live, and then that would be the model for others to come in November and December. If that works for everybody, is that okay with you, Commissioner Valle and Dell? to have you?
Well, we actually haven't taken a vote, and I'm very mindful that I'm not trying to push an agenda on the other 15 commissioners, right? And I see Commissioner Sky has a comment. We always vote by consensus, right? On doing something more on a policy recommendation, but to do something like this, I do think it should be a consensus. I'm not trying to push an agenda. I actually just think this would be useful, practical, purposeful, and we'd actually get I really do think we'd get these labels changed because we are the California Recycling Commission, right? But with all of that, I'm not pushing my agenda, and if others have a problem or can't do it or don't want to do it, then I respect that. So I do think we should have some sort of vote.
We are going to vote.
Okay.
Commissioner Sky?
Thank you. So actually, I was going to make a motion, and I really appreciate both Commissioner Dell for pushing this idea forward, which I think really addresses one of the issues all of us have been frustrated about, which is not as much enforcement and the lack of resources for so many of our agencies to follow up on these enforcement issues. And, maybe, giving the benefit of the doubt to some of these companies that are maybe not familiar with how the laws are structured and maybe putting labels on their products, not realizing that they are violating some of those laws. I'm really excited that Commissioner Valle, our Vice Chair, will serve on this two-person committee if that's the approach that both of you are comfortable with. What I would just further recommend, and if you both agree, then I'll make that my motion, is for Commissioner Valle and Dell to vet the final letter and then place it for consideration. So we actually have an agenda item on each agenda that says consideration of however many letters, and that we'll know we should be looking for that many letters that are actually ready for the commission to approve. We'll vote on those particular letters at the next meeting, and then those will be ready to send off. So if both of you are comfortable with that approach, that'll be my motion, that we empower this two-person committee to develop the letters, vet them, and then place them on the agenda for consideration by the full commission.
I agree.
I'll second that motion and add that I work with Chair Sanborn to finalize an official letterhead for the commission.
Do we have a name for this two-person committee? Is it just labeling? Or is it labeling and enforcement?
Labeling is it's actually contamination. I'd like to call it maybe contamination and labeling.
Contamination outreach.
Yeah.
Contamination, labeling, and outreach committee. That makes sense? Okay. So we have a motion and a second. All those commissioners okay with this? Thumbs up? I see lots of thumbs. Is there anybody who has a thumbs down or is opposed to this idea? Seeing none, it passes unanimously. And I want to really thank Commissioner Dell for leading on this, and really excited Vice Chair Valle will be working on this. Thank you both very much, and we look forward to seeing as many letters as you can, feel comfortable giving us at the next meeting, and we'll put that on the agenda. Just let us know. Actually, we have to work on the agenda today for the next meeting because it has to be posted by Friday. So can I assume up to 3 letters?
Well, if I may, do we actually have to have a specific amount because that we have to know 2 weeks in advance? If we could just have approval of letters, you can put a range, but that's just a bit tough to decide. And the other thing is, I really do want input from the commission and the public of what products we should and who should we could contact. I have a long list. Like I have my box over here that says really bad labels, but I know there were some Commissioner Oseguera had, so they can be sent to me as ideas, but I don't want to be the decider. I want the commission to be the decider. And then once we get a standard letter written, I mean, that'll be pretty replicable. So for the next meeting in 2 weeks, I'd like to suggest we finalize. This one I've got right now is to Aldi as an example because it's a plastic bag and there'll be a lot like this, that we finalize that. That would be
I'm
first
sorry.
step.
We're running out of time. Commissioner Sky, I thought you said you asked in your motion for a specific number. Was
I did, just because I want the commissioners to know what they're expecting. So that an alternative is, if we know that once it has been vetted, the letter will be in a particular folder, and we can know once the agenda is posted that we look in that folder, and that is a folder for the letters we actually review. We don't add any new ones between when the agenda is posted and when the meeting is, so we all have time to review it. We'll be ready to actually approve those particular letters.
Okay, the agendas get posted the Friday, like this Friday for the next meeting, so I doubt it would be ready by then. So I would suggest that what we plan on is the two-person committees need to have their final documents ready no less than 3 days before the commission meetings, and I will send out a reminder email to all commissioners, as I did yesterday, about what's on the agenda, linking to those boxes so that you all have it right there and you all know where to go to find everything. Would that be helpful?
Perfect.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So then
We can put a standing 5 in, just to make this simple.
Okay.
We can put a standing 5, if that's
And
fine, because I don't want to overwhelm the commission.
yeah, up to 5. Okay, very good. Thank you very, very much. It's very exciting, and I'm glad we got that done. All right, so we'll now move on to agenda item 10, which is update on organics, market development, recycling issues. And again, we're very short on time. We've already gone through the two-person committees. So I'll just ask Commissioners Kapikoff and Davis if there's anything urgent you would like to share with the commission on those issues.
Well, I noted a couple things that are missing from the list, and glass packaging being one. I did bring it up at the committee of the whole, but it didn't make it's not a two-person because I've got a draft, but if anybody wants to work with me on that, it would be a two-person. In the minutes of the last commission meeting, we set goals, and one of those was the procurement of organics. And I don't think that was allocated. Commissioner Kapikoff, maybe it's something that you're going to be taking out, but I didn't see it. And again, it's a big issue. So.
Yeah, I have a comment on that really quick. Commissioner Oseguera was not at the last meeting, and I didn't know if we could assign him to a two-person commission or committee at that time. If his absence.
Just kidding. Would you like to do it, Commissioner Oseguera?
Yes, I'm fine.
Okay, great. All right, so we have another two-person committee, so we will now add, so that was for the procurement of organics. Okay, so that'll be 16 because 15 was the contamination, labeling, and outreach. So 16 will be organics procurement, and that will be, I'm saying this out loud to make sure I got it right, Oseguera and Kapikoff. So thank you for bringing that up, Commissioner Davis.
And then just real quick, to get items, to get, for example, a draft policy, do we send that to you, to the chair, to put in the Google Drive?
Yep.
Okay.
Or to Commissioner Ward, because he and I both have access to the Google Drive.
Okay. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you so much. Is that it, Commissioner Kapikoff? Anything else? Okay, very good. We're just going to assume everybody's doing the work and reporting as needed to us. So Commissioner Schneider, you want to speak?
Sorry, yes, thank you. Cal Cities had a workshop for my region, so the two counties on SB 1383, and basically talked about collection programs and nothing about markets for it. And we are, believe it or not, an agricultural county. So to me, we should be having a commercial composting operation in county, and that organic should, whenever possible, be handled in county. Are we, as a commission, doing any work in that area? if the commission did, it would help me a whole lot more when I'm going through the JPA that handles 2/3 of the county to say, let's spend some effort and time in citing something here instead of sending it way above the Bay or way down to southern Santa Clara County.
Commissioner Kavikoff, do you want to respond?
Specifically on infrastructure, we do have a 2-person subcommittee on that.
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed it. If they could work on it, it would really help me when I'm trying to reach out with my peers and say, I think it's a commitment that my county have a commercial compost operation. And we've got the opportunities. We could even put them indoors in old greenhouses. We just have to bite the bullet.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree. There's a definite need.
Great, thank you for
Thank you.
taking that up. All right, so we're running short on time, and I want to make sure we spend time on this, which is agenda item number 11, which is was requested by Commissioner Toyota, and I think it's a great idea to really discuss as a commission goal setting around a circular economy. And I was noted that Director Maki Wagner today did mention that she would be happy to have recommendations from us on the circular economy and what their new office can do to help drive it. So I'll turn it over to Commissioner Toyota to lead this discussion.
Thank you. I feel like ultimately it's kind of what we're doing right now. Everything that we do, it's moving toward a circular economy. I brought it up because I don't feel like we put it together. And I think if we did, it would give a little more direction and a little more strength to what we're doing when people look at these policies. So I think one of the first things that we should talk about is just the language of using it. So for instance, we talk about the problems of single-use plastics or single-use anything. When you look at it in the viewpoint of a circular economy, it starts right there. You have a single-use plastic. California is moving to a circular economy. You need a management plan because you're outside of what we're moving toward already. So here's the starting line. So this is, we all know that it's a problem, but this, to me, when we use speech like that and we start putting it together in the eyes of a circular economy, that lends the strength to it. And if we push that more and more, we may even be able to start looking at, hey, we have a goal of a time frame for it. If you have something that's a single use anything, you're going to need a management plan, whether it's EPR, whether you're looking into how can I do it so that it can fit into a circular economy, what can change in that, then that's the language we need to start to use, and that's the kind of the mentality we need to do when we talk about single-use plastics, when we talk about right to repair. That's a part of a circular economy. And when we look at this, and we may be able to start looking at it as we start doing these things, that where we need to focus. We know that processing is an issue with a lot of the things that we're trying to get recycled. But when we look at it in a circular economy, we can see that more clearly. Is this the pipeline in a full circular economy? This is the process to bring things around. Is this where things get hung up? Is processing, we can say, if we're able to say that we can't process 8 out of 10 things that could be recycled or moved into the circular economy, then maybe we could focus policy there. But broadly, from that high-level view, this is kind of where I think that all the things that we're talking about, how we have to put it into a concept and build that concept and really focus specifically on circular economy is the process and where things are, and making it and bringing it together, I think is how do we bring that together? And it certainly starts with language, but we can look at particular parts of what makes the circular economy work and what needs to be focused on and where policy can be focused as well.
I'd like to follow up on Commissioner Toyota because I really like this idea, and I'm thinking of Commissioner Ward and I as we look to go back to the report to maybe really lay out, because now it's official from the governor in the budget that there will be an Office of Circular Economy and Innovation. So we know we're aligned with the administration. If we do an introduction about what a circular economy is, and probably should follow the Ellen MacArthur Foundation definition, which is a 3-part test, which a lot of people narrowly focus on the second. So the first is design waste and pollution out of the system, then keep materials in motion. And a lot of folks just think about keeping them in motion, but they forget about designing waste and pollution out. And then the last thing, and one of the most important things I think, is that we actually regenerate natural systems. We've done too much damage. We can't just be less bad anymore. And we could also propose a time frame. It seems like there's a whole lot going on out there, you know, with climate and GHG, that really 2030, 2032 tops is it. We have hit the tipping point. So just throwing that all out there, but we could actually take a stab at figuring out where to put that circular economy big frame at the beginning of the report, and that everything follow that, and bring it back to all of you for consideration. So I'll turn it over now to Commissioner Ward, Dell, and then Osagura, I think.
Generally, I very much support this direction, and I think it's something that we can and should develop. But I do also feel that at this point, while I think the governor's actions have been great in establishing that new office, there still isn't an overarching piece of legislation that actually makes the circular economy part of California's state policy. And so in some ways, that's what we need, because otherwise we'll be structuring these things of saying, all right, we think circular economy is where we should go. This is the arguments why we should go there, but it still doesn't have the same force as, say, the 75% goal. And so I really think this needs to be something that we work into policy for legislation, because I think that without an overall law saying California is moving towards a circular economy, then we're just going to be making a series of suggestions that we see as coherent, but aren't as coherent from statewide policy.
Thank you. Commissioner Dow, and then Osagura.
I'm not a fan of the circular economy. I think it's the greenwashing term of the decade of our generation. We were called litter bugs in the 70s. Now we're all going to have a circular economy. It's been hijacked by the plastics industry and disposables, and I'm not a fan of it. I think we should be a zero waste economy or some other thing than that, but it's been hijacked. It's tainted, in my view. Before our time ends, I just want to make sure that we can get things on the agenda before the clock ends for the next time. And actually, just so one is, I'd like to make a presentation on a policy. Second, just remind you, you weren't here, Commissioner Sanborn, we do need to request from Cal Recycle an update on their education program. I would like to directly ask Cal Recycle, is it illegal for a city/MRF to accept non-recyclables into the recycle bin with the intent to burn it in a cement kiln? Because I don't think that should be legal.
We will make time for that, I promise. Commissioner Osagura and then Commissioner Sky.
Just wanted to mention, I mean, in terms of ensuring that that the nomenclature that's used, right, regarding whatever term is used, I mean, you know, this, in terms of the circular economy, that we all agree to what that is. I think in our recent travels, Chair Sanborn, we heard what happens when folks use the same term, meaning a multitude of things. I think also Commissioner Dell Price pointing towards that. If we can, you know, take the term and truly turn it into something that we agree that then benefits and it has a circularity to help the environment, then that would be you know, that would be productive. But once again, I think it is extremely important that we all agree to a definition and what it is. Because when you can't or you don't, then as Commissioner Dale mentioned, the hijacking can happen or misinterpretation. Or some folks are saying they do it great, but they're doing great whatever they think it means versus, what we all agree it should have. That would be my comment.
Clearly has to be defined somewhere as to what we're saying. And then Commissioner Sky?
Just a reminder that a year ago, a few commissioners had been resigned to the fact that the chasing arrow symbol had been co-opted and hijacked by industry. And just yesterday, the governor celebrated the fact that he signed SB 343 into law. So we shouldn't tolerate hijacking. We should push back and reclaim terminology. And I think Commissioner Sanborn, those 3 points that you reminded us about, that what truly circular economy should be about is what we should be pushing for and fighting for. Don't give up on the term.
Yeah, I agree. And I actually think that the problem is that it's being hijacked, and we have to push back, because it is what Ellen MacArthur Foundation, unless somebody has a different definition, that is what it is internationally, and it is being misused. So we're going to have to move on. I would propose, if it's okay with all of you, to probably work with Commissioner Toyota, and I can work on a little blurb, and we can give it to Commissioner Ward to plop into the report. He and I, and then you guys can all look at it as we start cleaning out the stuff that we don't need anymore in the report, and putting this in as a introduction, as for a concept for maybe the next meeting for you to take a look at, just to start it and start the conversation. Does that sound okay? I see it. One thumbs up. Is everybody okay with that? Okay. Okay, so we'll go ahead and do that. Thank you so much. And thank you again for Commissioner Toyota bringing this up. Excellent point. So with that, we've got just a few minutes, and we have to talk about agenda items for future meetings. And I'd like to start scheduling into mid-November. So let's see, we've got the 20th. It's a 4-hour meeting, a committee of the whole, so lots of details. We're going to have to include the charter, since we were not able, and I was not able to get to making changes to that. Just more than I could do it this last time, so I'll try to get to it this time so we can vote at that meeting, just like we voted at the commission meeting. And then after that, I would take off probably legislation and budget proposals, because that's been done. Remove that. Data review, we always leave on, and so we can make sure we do that. Director Maki will not be here. We'll do the report outs in writing, so I will put that together for you so you can all respond quickly and read those in advance. And then, so that leaves lots of time. So I think Commissioner Dell will see some of your letters, and we'll spend time on those and have a discussion about those. Is there anything else that, and then I would add the report, that we start really working on the report and sharing it every meeting, so that you can all see what we're taking out and what we're adding. And it's little bite sizes instead of a giant chunk at the end. Does that seem reasonable? And is there anything else?
When is David Alloway scheduled?
It's on November 3rd.
November.
Yeah,
so you want that?
It's for November 3rd though. Yeah, that's already on there. So anybody else?
You're talking about the committee, you're talking about the committee as a whole.
October 20th meeting. Yes, the committee of the whole.
Remember, you have to, yeah, but the committee of the whole cannot take action.
Well, this was my suggestion. I was overridden. That's why I kind of wanted just 2 commission meetings, because I think this is overly complicated.
I think that's where we're heading. Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Well, we didn't put it on the agenda. So if you wanted to put it on the agenda to take another vote, to go back to 2 commission meetings where we don't have to change a charter. We just have 2 commission meetings a month without committees that are in public. They're just 2-person. I personally think that would be easier. I think this has gotten too complicated, but I'm not hearing anybody else thinking that. So
I'll motion to just go to 2 commission meetings a month.
I'll second that.
Okay, all commissioners vote. Thumbs up or down. Okay, I don't see any down. Good. Thank you, because now I don't have to change the charter and we can save ourselves that part of the agenda. And it'll just, I think, be simpler. Thank you very much. That'll keep it simple. Is there anything else, Commissioner Dow? You wanted also time for your presentation.
Yes, and also we should ask Cal Recycle OPA to give an update on the contamination education community-based science program.
If you could email me quickly, and then I'll make sure to forward that to them and make sure that happens. I appreciate it, but I think we've captured it here. And then anything else? Okay, well, I'll leave the same amount of time, about half an hour, 35 minutes, maybe longer for the two-person, and it's not for just report outs, it's for questions. So you'll be able to look at what the two-person committees did and actually have questions. And we are at time, so I'm going to say thank you very much. We've had another great meeting, and we will go ahead and close at 12:01. See ya on the 20th at 8.